Okay, I want to welcome everyone to the Board of Commissioners meeting in Merrimack Village District. Today is September 21st, 2020. I can call the meeting to order at 5:08 p.m. I just want to do a statement here. Due to COVID-19 and the state of emergency, the public participation will be offered by webinar. You may join the webinar by going to https://us02web.zoom.us/j/821122222741 or by calling 1-646-876-9923 and entering meeting ID 821-1222-2741. And I just want to point out that information that I just read is on the today's meeting agenda, which you can find on MVD's website, which is mvd.org, mvdwater.org. And lastly, we want to thank, as a courtesy, Merrimack TV for recording this meeting, and they will be posting it to their website at a later date. So we could start by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so I think we have all 5 commissioners present, and we'll just go through a roll call. Could start with, looks like we got John, Paul, and Ken coming in from Zoom. And Ken, can you tell us where you're participating from?
From my home, on Jake's Lane in Merrimack.
Okay, and Paul?
I'm also participating from my home at 31 Peter Road in Merrimack.
All right, and finally, John?
25 Windsor Drive, Merrimack.
All right, and we got Wolf Von Schoen over here, and myself, Don Preventure, and we're at the Merrimack Village District office. So we do have all 5 commissioners here, and I guess we could get started with human resource review, finance review with Michelle Holton.
Okay.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure. Looking at the first financial report, budget versus actual through August 2020. Completing the month of August as a percentage of the year, we would be over 16% complete there, and we're seeing our revenues are coming in at, as a total, 19.9%. Even with factoring out the system development charge, which is account 40600, and that's an item that is slated to go to capital reserves, we'd still be at 17.53%. I also should note that for these first couple of months where we've had the drought and aren't quite sure how the numbers will come in as a result of some lower pumpage numbers and some lower actuals that we've seen so far, we do have 1 more month to go before we'll know where things fall. And just due to uncertainties with COVID, as we've looked at before, for both water sales domestic and mercantile, I brought our usual unbilled accrual down by 20%. So that's with the 20% deduction here. Also, Kristen and I are going to be working on how we do our unbilled entry, looking at sort of how we've done it, the changes that we're having with different rate increases that are going to be happening, how we can most easily use our history, blend in the rate changes as they come, to keep the entry as meaningful as possible and hopefully somewhat simple. We're also going to have our auditors are going to just give a run through on what we proposed. What we've been doing so far, they've been very happy with. They said we've checked actuals to our accruals, and they've come within reasonable lines. Just going forward, there are just some things with how the historical billing happens when we have a cutover for rate increases that add some complexity. And if we have multiple rate increases, we want to just look at how we're going to factor all that in. So that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll look at that. And when we go forward with the September financials, I'll further explain how we determined to do it going forward. So even with all those adjustments, most of the accounts are still, the revenue accounts are still coming in at a reasonable place. You do note that account 40401, fines and penalties, that obviously where we've had a moratorium on late fees is much lower than we had built the budget on. November, the November billing will be the first month that does not involve any months that are still part of the moratorium, where we're not allowed to assess late fees that are accruing on something that had any part from 7/15 back to March. So as of November, it would be at the board's discretion to discuss and determine sometime between now and then if we want to resume traditionally how we would apply late fees. We have sent out notices regarding any accumulated balances that have been building to work out payment arrangements. So we're hoping to maybe just do some outreach on some of the larger ones in the next few weeks or a couple of months and get some plans worked out there.
So are you just saying that the law says that ended on July 15th?
Yes, but for us, what's complicated
Extended
is
it.
that we bill on a rolling
Oh, yeah.
quarter. So we still have, right now, when we're billing in September, it's actually for August, July,
Yeah.
and June. And to try to decipher and explain to customers that, well, we could charge here for this because you haven't paid that portion, it really felt like it would cause a lot more
Yeah, I agree.
confusion for the amounts of the late fees, and also just in the spirit of everything everyone is feeling about there, and we thought we'd wait until that time frame was passed. And as I said, the board can discuss when they want to re-implement them and move forward with both. It would be late fees and disconnects. Those have not been happening.
Right. Okay.
The one account that we're seeing, just an odd number, 40411 for service charge miscellaneous in the negative. That was simply, we had accrued an invoice at the end of the year that we reversed, and we didn't have the actual account that it belonged to. So that's going to wash and actually be an offset. I believe it's going to be end up being an offset to water sales domestic, but I have to get those numbers from Amy where I didn't know what it was, put it to miscellaneous so it would stand out to me, and we can adjust that. It is a legitimate deduction, but it will be offset to the account that the original entry was accrued for. And moving down to expenses. The officer's salary, the only reason we're seeing a little overage there is that for the month of July, we had 2 prior commissioners because the meeting was held so late. So it's a small number, so that small additional item just throws that off there, but we should start to see that get back in line with the annual total. And for both administrative and field staff, we are both running about 14.5% on both of those. We will add in the breakdown detail. This was just our new staff putting in some of the budget info and needed some assistance with the breakdown piece. So we have most of that in, so we will see each line item. Moving on to page 2. Uniforms, count 60200. That's simply a matter of timing. We upload charges to our uniform company's cards at the beginning of the year, and the staff can spend it as they will, but the charge, we full blown pay the charge to Working Gear when we do that. It's just slightly Slightly over the 16% is purchase of water, 60300. And 60460 diesel fuel, higher than usual. We had to do some pump testing using the generators for well 4. So that was just an unusual charge, and that explains the difference there, as well as seeing 60500 for the motor vehicle expense, higher than just a straight percentage of where we are through the year. We know the truck inspections happen in September.
Mhm.
So we're going to see higher numbers for August and September. Then from there, as far as over what we'd like to see in the budget, the next one I would say is 80300, which is meeting expense. And part of that is the annual meeting that fell in July. We have Malloy Sound is most of the funds that are in there right now for that piece. Any questions on any particular items on these two?
No.
Okay. Page 3, as far as debt goes, there's the timing issue. We have larger payments that were just recently made, so it's showing us ahead of budget, but all principal and interest payments are made per the actual amortization schedules. So those will fall in line through the year. And we have been, you look below the line at other expenses, 90900. Those are some prior year budget expenses that were encumbered that have now been being used up. So they do not have a bearing on this year's budget. Next month, we'll review all the encumbered funds that have carried from last year and this year.
I'm sorry, which account was that?
Below the line in other income expense, other expense 90900 is prior year budgeted expense. So that's when if we have a signed agreement or a contract at the end of the year that was unable to be completed, the budgeted funds tied to that can be encumbered and carried forward.
Sure. Okay.
And we don't want to hit the expense accounts that will impact the analysis of this year's budget. It's taking the funds from the prior.
Okay.
So overall, our expenses are right at 16.6%, and we're showing a net ordinary income of over 133,000. As I said, some of the factors with the revenue, we're going to see how the actuals play out. So we may see some additional funds come on and bring numbers up from there. But even with all of that, I think that we're in a reasonable place there. And next page, anyone doesn't have any questions?
Anybody have questions?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think when you look at the previous year comparison, you can really see where we're using less water,
Well, this is also,
right?
but do remember that I have taken into the factor the 20% deduction. So I did the analysis on our prior year's actuals, 3 years rolling, and we took 20% off the domestic and mercantile, just for the unknown factor of our pumpage was extremely down in July, the drought continuing, not knowing how that's going to affect the future billings. And also, while we haven't seen a lot that we've kind of tied into COVID directly, some things are changing as far as businesses and schools and how things are going to shift and play. So we just wanted to be conservative.
So you created a reserve then, or as far as loss of income, or
No, what we did, we just
loss of
accrued,
revenues?
we just reduced our accrual.
Okay.
Yeah, we just simply reduced the accrual.
Okay.
And so if it ends up coming in higher, when it actually bills, it will hit.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And probably there too, we might be a little more off if if you're just looking at bottom line on total income to prior year, where our system development charges are quite higher at this point than they were last year. Now, I know that's an item that I've mentioned. We're wanting to decide the best way to present it on the financials, and it is one of the punch list items for this audit that we're going to make a determination. So right now, I just sort of pointed out where most likely it's going to go before our voters to be moved to capital reserves. It's not slotted to be used for current year expenses. So I feel like it should be treated differently.
So what fed that? Was that Old Blood Road or something, or?
This is many, we've had entrance apps coming in left and right.
Really?
Hampshire Ventures.
Yeah, Hampshire Ventures. I can't think of the name of it.
Calling a blank, what is it?
Wire Road.
Strife LLC. There's been some that I'm not as familiar. There's been some one-offs, but quite a few of them.
The new project behind,
The daycare.
that's that Apple
Across the street.
Apple Crest. Yeah. No, the one over behind the hotel. That whole project there.
Oh, okay.
Executive Park Drive. I don't think Flatley's in there because that would have been last year.
Don't think.
Flatley, Gilbert Crossing.
That's definitely last year.
That was all last
That
year.
was last year. Okay.
Um,
So this is where we see the growth of the town actually in basically.
Mhm.
Is this also including well owners that converted to?
yes.
It does.
Yeah, it's any new customer to the system that would be paying that SDC.
That almost would be interesting to see a breakdown between well owners, like existing properties, right? They converted to public well water versus new construction. Yeah. I could see that people would be interested to see that.
That's something Amy should build a.
I'm not saying it's a must, but I just know that new developments is a big subject in town, right? Obviously, and it could be interesting for people to see that this is not just
Some as well conversion.
right. Some of that, like the well conversion, obviously, people can't really complain about that, right? That's something that existing neighbors have any right to. Well, anybody has any right to do that, but you know what I mean. It's a different animal. Right?
Pull that together.
All right.
So overall, between the 2 years' expenses, we're slightly up by just over $13,000. Last year, we were at, on page 3. Last year, our net ordinary income was at almost 180. We're over 133 right now, but as I said, we're making the conservative adjustments on expected revenues. And we'll see the actuals, how they play out in the next couple of months or so. So any questions on anything particular as far as comparison to last year?
Looks like it's good. Oh, you got
So,
something?
well, I just want to point that out. So, account 5202, field staff overtime down 56%. Read that right? Just because some people are watching our overtime, rightfully so. I would like to confirm that.
5202.
50202.
Yeah, at this time, I mean, we're at 30, well,
So for July and August, we're down 56% overtime.
we are down, but we also had a foreman move to an operations position, which is now part of admin.
Right. And that's a salary exempt.
No, at present, that is still an hourly.
So it would or would not show up here.
It would not show up there, it would show up under 50107, admin overtime. And that would, right now, we're kind of on par with where we were about, a little bit more this year, but there is
Okay.
that additional person.
Okay, so we went up 8% there, but 56% down in the general field staff.
Yes. But field staff overtime is something that there are so many factors.
That can
If a
vary.
break comes up,
Don't talk break.
sorry.
Well, I guess my point is, we point out when it goes up and we are worried about it, so we should also point down when it goes down, and we're happy about it, so, right? So,
Yeah, no, and everyone has been making concerted efforts
Mhm.
with that, and a lot of the new staff is starting to come up to speed with their training and additional training and people sort of settling into roles. So,
Mhm.
any other questions? Last report is bank balances. We are drawing in the interim for wrapping up wells 4 and 5 treatment plant from our funds that are going to be reimbursed by capital reserve. So we will see a capital reserve for both wells 4 and 5, and also the matching from the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust grant, the last of that, and well 4 replacement all being reimbursed to us in October. So we have things slated there. So you do see some funds as far as like the operating accounts coming down. We have some of our larger debt payments that come in right after the year end also. But like I said, we'll have the reserves reimbursing us, and that they turn that right around.
Mhm.
So we already have that scheduled with them. Does anyone have any questions? No?
Okay.
Okay.
And then the other item that we had on for finance was the COLA adjustments. We had voted on the COLA adjustment from the board, I think in February initially, that we would do a 1.6% cost of living adjustment. Once the annual meeting was held, that would approve the budget, which would be the second half of the calendar year. Historically, the approved COLA adjustment would be retroed back to January 1st. Just in light of everything going on and where we had drought and we had COVID and we just had some uncertainties before I processed a payroll for retro to January 1st, from January to June, which would be over $10,000. I just didn't know if the board would just want to have another assessment that they're still on board with that, and that's what they would like to proceed with. So it was approved in February. The budget was then approved in July. We have discussed going forward, perhaps starting next year, hopefully always having our meetings back to March, that we would do the commencement of the COLA at either April 1st or July 1st, rather than go back with the retro. Keep things simpler processing wise. But for this year, where things stand is we had approved it retro, and the budget is approved. But I just know different towns have been looking at different things with everything going on. And before we just put in the payroll, I didn't know if you wanted to give it any further consideration.
So we already discussed in February that we're going to make it retroactive to
Yes.
January.
Yes.
Now, normally we would have just processed everything and we wanted to bring it back to the board. Just,
Is there something we could change to really just coincide with the meeting? You know, make a one-time bridge, a gap payment or something like that to bridge that gap between the meeting and the first of the year. And then just really go after the meeting and, well, we're backdating it because the cost of living increase is being decided, but then it needs to be voted on, right?
Yes,
Right.
because the
So,
funds for the second half of the year, that budget isn't approved yet.
right. But we could also say that we plan it into the budget for the current year to have an increase for the first 3 months of the new year, right? And then not backdated after the meeting,
I'm not following. So the funds are approved through June, actually.
right?
But the meeting approves a new budget starting July 1.
Right.
So this went over and just didn't get approved till July 7th, but then from July 1 through the rest of the calendar year, it is approved. Each year does have a factor in for a cost of living adjustment.
I guess my point is we decided something in spring, right? Had to wait for the vote, but now the situation changed a little bit, right? I mean, there's people out there that are,
And that is why
Struggling, right?
why I thought that.
right. And I think I like that question a lot, but it goes to show you that the commitment at the time is kind of premature because we can't execute at the time because we need to wait for the meeting, right?
Mhm.
So my question is, can we stop that repeat commitment for something that we don't know how it's going to be at the time of the meeting by, either letting those 2 or 3 months expire and
Mhm.
not backdating one time, and then from there on out, it's just 1 year out from the meeting forward?
Problem is the fiscal year is gonna be, it's gonna be choppy.
Now, for this one in particular, are you saying make it effective when?
No, just in general, I don't like that idea of, I never liked that backdating in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's what when
So-
we were discussing it, we were
Right.
saying.
And I'm just saying, but I
It's
don't,
usually gonna be March.
right,
And I have surveys, I've surveyed and other people have. There's quite a variety of how people do it. Some do retro, some do it with the meetings usually being in March as of April 1st.
Mhm.
And some just go, well, let's just do July 1. It stays on with the person. It may go on later for the employees, but that increase is permanent.
And that was kind of my point. If we do it after the meeting, we would just basically have to commit over, beyond the fiscal year, basically, until the next meeting takes place, because we have that offset between fiscal year and meeting date, right?
Mhm.
So we basically would just have to basically commit to it for 15 months, right? Because
See. So you're
we
going
have a
forward.
3 months delay between the fiscal year and the meeting that normally happens, right? Well, 2 months. I don't know, I'm just trying to think it out loud.
it seems, and I don't know if this is possible or not, it just seems like it'd be more reasonable to make the adjustment start with the fiscal year in
Right.
July,
Right,
I was thinking the same thing, July 1.
right.
July 1.
Yeah, that's kind of my point, yeah.
instead of always having to go back and,
It stinks now because you made a commitment months ago, and now
Well,
we're kind
that's
of
what
breaking that
yeah.
commitment to the employees, right, which isn't.
I did put out to them that I was bringing this up for
Hmm.
further discussion in light of everything going on in our community,
Hmm.
in the world with everything going on that's impacting us. Initially when I saw July pumpage numbers, like I said, it's not having as much of an impact as we would have thought, but we still do have to see a couple of more actuals in billing play out. But I was like, okay, just with everything, maybe we just want to touch base with this, with the board again, versus just when you go to review payroll, having an extra payroll for $10,000.
I appreciate that question. Did we do hazard pay? Because I mean, those are essential workers, right? And we didn't do hazard pay, right?
And we did technically not qualify as essential workers. Under public health, there were some things, some different programs that were out there for essential workers, and I inquired and sent it to those source foundations who were doing it, and they said, they were not considered part of public health.
Are you sure about that?
Water
Because we,
system?
no, I don't agree with that, because when we looked at the essentiality of the well 4 and 5 project, we looked at the list of essential workers, and it listed waterworks specifically.
Yeah, actually, there was.
that's how we were able to keep going, wasn't it?
There was actually a list that was generated, probably could pull it up again and we'll get that to you, but it did, we were on that with public service.
Under public health?
That I don't know. It was in the.
Okay,
No.
you may
But
be
it was the-
considered essential that you could still work,
Mhm.
but as far as some of the reimbursements.
Yeah,
that we were looking at,
right.
that's where, like, one of the umbrellas was public health, which I felt we would fall under, because I know in some communities, actually, it isn't even under if they have an official department, not all. But I sent the question directly to the entity handling the refund, and they said, no, we didn't. But definitely I'm up for,
Well, considering that we didn't pay hazard pay and we made a commitment to the employees back in when? February.
February, when we had done that.
I would probably say stick to it.
Yeah, I'd like to, I think if it'd be clearer going forward if we can. I don't know if we do the 15-month thing now and then
I would like that.
next year we can have it go from July to June again.
Yeah.
Instead of having it go back to January 1st all the time.
I would like that.
Does anyone else have any other questions or
I would
input?
think it would make that easier if it were going from, July to June instead of trying to retrack everybody's hours, I would think.
Right.
Almost definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give a yes vote here.
But I'm just curious, when it comes to the cost of living, is that, you were saying like every year there's a cost of living? Is it like a contract in a sense of what the percentage are for the next couple of years? For instance, for like next year, do you already know what the cost of living is going to be?
We base it off of what comes out for cost of living for Social Security. And
Okay.
it's at the discretion of the board. You could, I believe it's up to 3%. is the general guide.
yes.
Is that a calendar year? What time frame is the cost? When do they come out with the cost of living adjustment and what time frame is it?
They come out with it in the fall, starting for January. They're basing on a calendar year for Social Security.
Mhm.
But it's something that's up to our discretion to just know that that's a factor that's been put out there. There are some entities that even weigh in more local impacts and decide to do different
Mhm.
cost of living adjustments.
Yeah.
Because that's one that's on a broader area, but that's been the usual. And been considered, as I said, up to 3%. There have been times when it has been the actual cost of living adjustment put out there is higher than 3%, but the board usually will consider up to 3%.
But that's looking forward to the next calendar year, basically.
Yes.
That's what that number
Yeah, so it'd be
represents.
for the next calendar year. So this year, say if we had our meeting in March, it would already be, in effect as far as for Social Security, what we're basing our number off of for consideration. And as you said, we could approve and go with July 1 moving forward. So right now, if we do the retro, we can do that piece back to January, and then it just, at this point, would be actually, well, then it would be staying for a year and a half. It would be 18 months.
Right, and it would, I understand that would possibly reduce the income for staff for a couple of months in the following year, but I also think that in light of the current situation, I think that's almost a balanced trade, right?
Yeah.
So we're backdating it now, we're maintaining the commitment, that would be my suggestion, right? But then also the, commitment of the employees is being requested that we make that conversion now to go to the fiscal year, so we don't have to backdate.
And it sounds like it's going to make your job easier to have to, instead of tracking back all the numbers,
Yeah.
it's just going forward.
Yeah.
It
So
does, especially when there's a
anything to streamline your process too.
Yes.
Right.
No, but it's true, right?
Yeah,
It is true. No,
That
it
helps
is.
us-
And-
It helps the
efficient.
company, yeah.
Yeah, and also too, there can be implications depending on the amounts and when you cross over, if it crosses over calendar years, because payroll basis calendar year versus
Yeah.
the fiscal years. It most definitely is nice to be proactive and have it put in place to increase it.
It's just awkward to commit to something you don't know if you can. We don't even know if the budget gets approved, right? And then we committed to something and we have to get it
is
from somewhere else.
It is put as contingent.
Right, but it's still awkward,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
communicated in that way to the employees.
I would make that motion then to say we backdated this year again as
Okay.
discussed before.
Okay.
But then also moving that for the following years, extending basically that pay scale until the end of the current fiscal year. And then in the future, only going as of the beginning of the new fiscal year.
Okay.
I'm with that.
Okay.
I don't know if we need an emotion for that or not, if everyone just agrees with that. I don't know if you guys have any opinion one way or the other over there, or.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you necessarily need somebody.
So I think, I mean, if you really wanted to keep it the same, but change the date, then you just gross the raise up by 25% if you're moving it 3 months or,
We could, but you mean 25% of the current increase, right? Yeah,
yeah, so if it's
But, yeah.
1.6, make it 2.
right,
Right.
right.
And then
Yeah.
over the course of 15 months, they recoup what they wouldn't have otherwise gotten.
Yeah.
Pretty generous.
So I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if that's,
wouldn't-
I don't know if
wouldn't-
that's worth doing the math for, but
Well, whether it's 1.6 or 2, it would be the same. I mean, I'm just plugging everything into a spreadsheet right now, and we've already actually done the work to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think I would agree with that just because it's not the time to do that.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
so,
I like the idea general. If this was not this year, right? If this was not the COVID year, I would agree with that. But
and we were just changing timing of
right.
events.
But with this being the COVID year,
I mean, we are down on revenues. I mean,
right?
I
That's true.
think I was looking at this year, July and August versus last year, July and August, and just our water sales are down like 34%,
Yeah.
right?
And
Year
as
to
I
year.
said, that's where I put
Yeah,
a deduction in there to allow for what I believe the sales will be. Will be a bit off. And we do have a few projects, a few expenses that right away we said, okay, those are just those can hold back until we see how things come together. And we have been seeing water usage going right back up. But just when we truly have the no watering,
right.
we did see the impact.
All right. So we're clear on that? Then we'll go back. We are going to go back to January, and then we'll keep it for a year and a half and change it in.
I do believe we took a vote in February when we approved. I believe it was by
Yeah.
vote. So then if we're changing it, I believe we should have
I
another,
would think, yeah.
just so that we have indication of consensus, and then also I can share the expectation to the employees for going forward.
Isn't it just a change in practice, though?
Well, it affects the budget though, so you would think.
In a sense of when we would, so in
Oh,
other
that's
words,
true.
we're not going to retro. It's just going to be anymore as far as COLA goes. It would just be January 1. That'd be retro. July 1st.
True, we did already vote on this
There's
one,
two
so I
things.
do have a vote right now to process.
It's,
And to just say our timing practice is changing, and I can communicate that to the staff.
I mean.
So that next year, our proposal,
Vote again, they can. I don't see the need to,
fine.
we've already got that vote out there. And again, it's just a change of practice. So.
Okay.
Of when.
and next year when we propose to you, we'll be saying for the COLA effective 7/1, contingent on the budget being approved.
And then we'll make the vote then for the value and the change in the timing.
Yeah, we'll just propose it with instead of retro, the effective date
Yeah.
being proposed
Right.
by administration would be 7/1.
Okay.
Pass it along to the staff. Okay.
All right. I guess we're good on that then. Was there anything else? That was the last thing on the agenda for.
For Underwood, did we?
No, didn't make the agenda because you talked about,
Underwood.
oh, no, we're the funding source. You emailed me about a funding source?
This was the rate study.
Right, that's Underwood, but that
Oh.
email that you sent me, you were looking to confirm a funding source for,
For wells 4 and 5, the 673,000 had been approved to come out of capital reserves. And then Ron had been approved to have authorization for approving change orders up to 100,000, and then coming back to the board, explaining them as they went along. But I couldn't find where those additional change orders, the funding to pay those, was officially deemed to also come from capital reserves. I believe it's the intent from some of the minutes, but I didn't see where it was officially indicated that those changes would also be paid out of capital reserve.
All right, so we need to make a motion to approve the additional change orders to come from capital reserves.
Yes, and I didn't know do you want to just stay in line with whatever the limit is you have for Ron to approve them?
I suppose, are we done with change orders over there yet? I'm not really sure. Something could come up, I guess.
Something could come up. I'm thinking, do we actually have to have a dollar amount to it? Or just a clarification that all change orders are.
I think we probably need a dollar amount. We'll just do the dollar amount that we gave. Was it Pete, I think, had a spreadsheet that had a certain, was 100 and,
It had 120,000.
so we just need to clarify where that would be coming from. Right?
So that you have additional change orders since what I just received on the apps for 4 and 5?
I don't think we've used it all yet, though.
We hadn't used up to,
No.
we were below 100.
No, he's just saying the limit was 120, right?
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I was still at 100. I didn't know it had been up to 120.
Yeah, we had to bump it up for something, I forget.
Yeah, we went from 80 to 120. That was, I think, like 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago. We bumped it up to that level. And I thought at that point in the minutes that you approved it coming from reserve funds. I thought you did, but I'd have to go back and look, but I believe you did.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So would that be in the minutes then from a few months ago, possibly, if we did do a motion on it? All right, do you want to check that first and then we can revisit this if we have to do another motion, if we didn't do one before?
Sure, yeah, so I can even,
We can move
yeah, we can
along.
talk about rate study. Are we
Yeah.
able to flip that for the order? Okay.
Yeah, and did you want Underwood to participate in that too, right?
Yes.
The section, we're gonna flip the agenda around a little bit. I think you guys might be aware of that. I think Jill sent an email out earlier, but we want to talk about 1F, which is water rates, to put that up next on the agenda so we can have Michelle here to participate in that discussion.
Yeah, hi, Don. Yeah, thanks. Actually, Underwood, I actually brought it up, asked Jill to put it on there too.
Oh, okay.
So,
good.
and I think Michelle certainly wants to be a part of that. So, Michelle, unless you had anything, I'll jump in with what I had in mind.
Yeah, no, start in.
Okay. It was just a reminder, Dawn, for you and the rest of the board that the last rate update we did was 2 years ago, and the last rate increase you did was just over a year ago, July 2019. That rate adjustment was in accordance with the upcoming capital projects. And if you remember, most of you remember, some of you may not, because you weren't here, there was 3 steps in the rate adjustments that needed to be done. There was a 13% adjustment in July of last year. There was a projected 13% to be in the
19.
following.
Well,
19, wasn't
we
it?
implemented 19, but
Right,
the study said 13.
right. But we did 19 because,
Oh, really? I just checked the math. I thought it was, I actually just checked the math, but maybe it was 19. And then I thought the next recommendation was 13, but at least that's what I had in my, what I sent you, which,
Yeah, where we initially started out was the 13 and 13. And when we built the budget, using the goal for capital reserve contributions of 500,000,
that's right,
that's where we were coming up that we needed 19%.
that's right.
okay.
And then
Yep.
we figured we have another year of financial actuals that we can provide you. And we
Okay.
also now know the funding actual rates, the percentage rates for the funding, where when we did the first study, we were using bonds, the bond rates, which are higher than we were able to secure with DES. And also we were able to get the grant.
Right. No, yeah, that's right. So the subsequent rate increase, I do recall the board going to 19% was after the original rate study or the rate study was done. So, yeah, so I had forgotten about that, but it went, the original rate study had a 13, 13 and 40 for a total of 79%, I think, for everything. And you did 19 last year. And so that, I think the thought was, if I recall right, it might need to be 13 this time, or it might need to be something less depending on how the costs come in. But the whole point was, it was probably time this fall, winter to do an update on the 5-year projections now that capital costs are coming in. So it's not something I think we have to do imminently. I think we just have to do it in a timely fashion so that you're prepared to decide what you want to do come July. So I wanted to bring it back up just as a reminder that in the next couple of months we ought to be talking and looking and projecting out again now that we have a better or an updated handle on costs. So that would allow you to do that next step, and then the final step would be based on, really the final accounting once we know that for FY 2022.
And no, I believe,
And the last with a 40% increase was due to wells 2 and 3 and the iron and manganese treatment plant, right? Now that we're actually taking a different path and possibly breaking off well 3, right, from that project, and pursuing other options that are probably timed a little bit later, I don't think those 40% are really valid anymore.
No, well, to your point, it's exactly why I think we need to do an update.
Yeah.
Because yes, there are some offsets that probably reduce the need for an increase. There are some offsets that probably deserve or could cause an increase. Like we know this rate model was done best back when we were doing the original capital improvements with single unit PFAS vessels. Now we're doing more. So that's exactly the point. Is I think we should probably start planning for that, knowing the new costs that we have over this winter.
Yeah, I agree.
okay, and also I thought that the second rate increase would have been scheduled for this past July.
I had the same question.
We had that, and we had intentionally, with everything going on, had said
That was when, we would.
hold there, but that's why I wanted us to kind of do a refresh of the study and also verify all the substantial completion dates, which will then kick in our first debt payments, and just make sure we're all clear on when those are going to come in so that we can build up the funds to be able to cover those with the rate increases.
I think there was.
You're right, Michelle. That was the original plan, was that the next rate increase would have been implemented by now.
Right. I remember asking about that, and I thought there was a gap year in there or something, but apparently not. So we're probably going to be a little behind then, somewhat, I would think.
Maybe. I mean, some of your debt probably isn't kicking in as soon as maybe as we thought to.
Yeah.
So
I know there were some extensions.
yeah.
It's certainly not a bad year to hold off on a rate increase, assuming things will get better.
So what I just wanted to do was plant the seed that, working with you and Michelle, we should probably update that model this winter.
Definitely early enough for.
Does that affect our budget planning that's going to be coming up in a month or two?
It will if you don't like the recommended rate increases. So.
Yeah, I would almost like to do a refresh of the study to see if we're going to more so need to try and do an increase, even if it's smaller number for January 1
Yeah, but budget is not here in fall.
versus July 1.
We just did our own for budget. Fiscal year is June.
Do it now, Michelle, you mean?
Yeah, or what the impact would be. What is the difference? If we wait until July 1, how much larger is it going to make it? And do we all feel like doing 2 is better than 1, or what the best?
I'm sorry?
We started talking about doing the next rate increase July 1. But that's why I want us to get put in the new actuals, put in the rates, the grant, determine any extensions that we have on when first debt payments will be, so that we know what we're building towards, and revisit, are we still wanting to go with the $500,000 a year capital reserve contribution, and see if we wait until next July, what that rate increase would be versus trying to do one January and perhaps July 1.
No, I think I don't want to do more than one reading. It's a heck of a feat to try to, you gotta read all the meters and it's just,
Okay,
I personally, I think we should just at this point wait and implement it beginning of next fiscal year. But that makes sense of what Keith's saying. You can do the study over the winter, then we'll have the numbers before we do the budget planning, which is typically when, in February or?
yeah, we're starting October.
Yeah, usually
I
stuff.
thought it was.
Well, yeah, but not, you guys do, but
Yeah.
our review is not gonna be until
February is when you.
February, right?
See it, yeah, well, I think our first, January, right? No, that, our work session's in January.
Yeah, almost in January.
So what I'm saying is, does Keith have to have his stuff done before you guys start planning out the budget?
I would think
Probably
so.
do, right?
Yeah.
I almost would suggest it's the other way around. As long as we need to be setting rates based on what you're proposing for budgets, it will be a little bit iterative if you want to find out a scenario.
Mhm.
So it sounds like we should be going in parallel with you. And we would be wrapping up around February, I suspect, when you sort of land on what the budget's going to be.
Well, I mean, we're 2 months into the fiscal year and we're at $330,000 net income, right?
No, 130. No, from our budget, that stops at net ordinary income. Below the line are other items that are not budget related.
Yeah, okay, true,
So because some of those entries are just simply
right,
to move
okay.
the debt to the balance sheet.
Okay. But-
So budget-wise, we're at 100 and,
But again, I mean, our
30.
costs didn't really decrease, it rather increased because we had to buy water, right? We still have our run rate of cost, right? And we had a pretty low revenue 2 months in comparison. So, and we still had 133,000
Mhm.
net ordinary income. So
Yeah,
that goes to show you that unless we have like the debt service, it's really going to be the debt service that's going to make all the
yeah,
difference.
that's where I want to just get
Right.
that,
Right.
ironclad of
So we
when
need to-
those first debt payments are
Right.
going to come up. With the capital reserves, we can have our goal, but we can be flexible with how our actuals
Right.
play out. So if we have perhaps a year or two that they're less, than less with what our ideal is factored in.
Right.
We just have to keep in mind too, that if we want to keep wanting to pay things out of capital reserves, that when we're doing that at 500,000 here, 500,000 there coming out, and it's not going in.
Right.
We just want to keep an eye on that too.
But I mean, we should be good until next summer with the rate increase at this point.
With where we currently stand, and I believe with the next project would be Turkey Hill, and I believe that had a push out of a year on substantial completion. Tim had
Yeah.
emailed, but I never saw the final comeback from DES. He said it was basically approved. We were just waiting to get back the official documentation, and I just hadn't seen that come back to me yet. So I'd just like to confirm that.
So the debt service kicks in with completion, right? For 4 and 5.
It's a year after.
It's a year after.
Well, this is,
4 and 5 we won't have,
4 and 5 isn't gonna have debt.
No.
Well, our portion do, yeah. Well, yeah,
No,
okay.
we didn't take any bonds.
Turkey
right,
Hill
that's
was the
right.
first.
Turkey Hill, you're right,
Turkey Hill,
you're right.
Yep, and now I believe we were able to get a push out for a year so that January 2022 would be our first.
usually in the SRF, it's a year after substantial.
Okay,
Um,
but I have that paperwork saved from Tim Post, so
Yeah, and-
circle back.
And Turkey Hill was not a huge project either, so,
That was a debt service of about 100,000 that you're delaying about a year.
right.
Okay.
So we should probably be fine with looking at an increase in summer.
I would say, yeah, the 6% we're supposed to do in July 1, if memory serves me right, that was basically the 500,000 in the capital reserves. So we just could be.
I think it also included a portion of the PFAS treatment plant too, Ron. So it did include the first treatment plant.
I mean,
7 and 8.
7 and 8,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Yeah.
not PFAS, I manganese.
No, PFAS. It was, so the basis of the study at the time, which I think goes to your point, that debt service is now going to kick in a lot later. We could delay, I think. But that original 13 and 13 making 26, you broke it up to 19 and 6 or something, included PFAS at 7 and 8 debt service. So if that gets delayed, that's just another reason why Dawn's probably suggesting, okay, we can probably wait. But what I would suggest is we could put a scope together and start working on it with Michelle over the next couple of months so that we target sort of a draft rate recommendations around February.
Okay,
Yeah.
Does that seem to make sense?
yep, that seems reasonable, and we'll have it where we're wrapping up budget, so if we're surprised by something, we can react accordingly.
Yeah, and I remember last time, I think we met just before this rate study was finalized, and we did a couple extra scenarios based on a couple of what ifs you wanted us to check. So I would see us doing that February, March.
Great, and I'll have the actuals, the budget-based actuals within the next few weeks. We're just wrapping up with our audit, so as far as the budget piece, that I can get over to you.
Okay. And Don got my attention when he said a 34% reduction in water sales. Hopefully that was just the last couple of months, but because that's not small.
No, and that's our peak usage. That's where we bring in all our revenue, is in the summer months, and we missed 2 months, 2.5 months.
But we can see what impact that had too.
July was where the pumpage was way off, and then already August, and I'm just talking pumpage numbers off the top of my head, but July we were off.
Big time.
Yeah, 10 figures. 2 or 3 million less than last year as far as pumpage for August, and I don't have the September numbers yet. And I know pumpage doesn't directly.
Well, I mean, just looking at these numbers that we went over, just comparing this year to last year, it's down like 34% just in those 2 months combined, right?
Because the accrual was lower. It was an assumption.
So these aren't real numbers then?
It's what,
It includes accrual.
yeah, we do an analysis of actuals that have happened for the billing that's going to come. So when we close out August, we have billing for September, October, and November that's going to include months August and back.
Right.
In part. The September would be all of it. October would be 2/3, November would be 1/3 that still belong to the period from August back.
Right.
So we look at a 3-year analysis that shows us what has that been. And historically, I mean, we hadn't had rate increases. Things were very steady as far as new developments coming on for a period. So we had very solid numbers to base it on.
Let's move on.
Now things are fluctuating. And with everything going on, I took the analysis, and then to be conservative, because we have some unknowns with the drought and COVID, I just took 20% off domestic water and mercantile. And we'll see, and as I said, we're starting just a more formal process of the spreadsheet tying out our actuals to the projections, just to see where that's falling, and also looking how we're going to do it going forward with, if we're going to have annual rate increases, and how we can handle that billing to make it so it still gives us good numbers to contribute to the future analysis.
All right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, Keith, as soon as I have the fiscal year 2020 numbers, I'll get them over to you.
Okay, and it sounds like we'll start hitting this probably in November, December timeframe, a little more heavier. Okay.
All right, so we want to move on to back to item number 1, which is just capital projects update with Underwood Engineers.
Yeah, if you don't mind, could I run through the water supply options update? Because I think it ties a little bit better in with what the rates are, and I just wanted to take 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, and then we can end. Is that all right?
Yeah, anybody else have any concerns? No, go ahead.
And then Peter can end on the infrastructure updates.
All right.
I had forwarded to you, and hopefully, I think they got into your packet, a couple charts. And what I wanted to go over them because as we're entering into this water supply options update, which will play into the rates if there's a capital project that we're going to add to things. For example, Mitchell Woods, depending on how you fund it and so forth. So it's important that we sort of set the basis for our evaluation here. So I'm going to go over a couple charts. I wanted to make sure we're summarizing the available sources. I want to look at the long-term trends. I'm going to show you a little bit about what happened in June 2020. And then the whole goal, I just want to show you the target that we're chasing for new sources. And so that target number is really an important one because as we look at our options, it's going to be the basis of what you need to meet the long-term needs. We've always had one, and I'll show you what that was. So the first chart I wanted to show you was, it's an 11 by 17. It's titled MVD Source Production and Long-Term Needs. On the bottom, it has the years, and on the y-axis, it has the million gallons today, a day. There's 3 lines on it. Does everybody have that one in front of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The annual average, what you sell for water on an average every year is shown in blue. So this has a trend chart of 2004 to 2020, at least through what we know so far with 2020. It's not the whole year, but it's been pretty flat. Your consumption's relatively flat. The next line
Keith?
up is, yeah.
Keith, thank you. That ADF here, annual ADF, is that
That's, yeah, annual daily flow or annual average. What it is it's your consumption for the entire year divided by 365.
Okay.
So it just gives us an average day.
So ADF stands for
average day, average daily flow.
Okay, sorry. Not a water engineer.
Oh, good. Good question. And then the other line above that, the gray one, is MDF, maximum daily flow.
Right.
What that is what we see on the highest day of any given year. So if you look at 2007 and 2008, those were the 2 highest daily flows we saw. We go through 365 days of records of consumption and we find the highest day. Might happen in August one year, it might happen in July the next year, it might actually happen in May one year. Usually it happens in the highest demand times, but in 2007, 2008, they were around 5 million gallons a day back to back. What you do see a little bit is a trend, somewhat of a trend downward in your max days. So that helps us establish what we need to do planning forward. If you take all of your well capacities at, when they're all churning and grinding at 100%, and we have well 4 and 5 back online, you have a system capacity of 5.4 MGD, which is that straight blue line at the top of the chart.
Keith, is that based on the approved withdrawal?
Yeah.
Or is that
Permitted withdrawal.
permitted production volume, whatever they call that? Yeah.
So that means, everything's pumping at 100%. That's what you can produce.
Temporarily.
In the case of these wells, we're using the sustained yields. So
Okay.
there are a couple wells that have some short-term stuff, but yeah, we looked at that a little different, but I think these are your sustained yields. But previous master plans, we had identified outwards that you may see max days as high as 6, or actually we've been using 5.9. So if that's still a good number, we think it is for now, max days planning 5.9, your current capacities are around 5.4. We're searching for 500,000 gallons of water. That's what we've always been searching for. That's one of the reasons Emery and Garrett's been helping you on new groundwater supplies.
I was just going to say I know there's a couple tables ahead, but the 5.44 million gallons, when we get to that table, maybe you can explain it better, but I don't think it's approved yield. I think it's a safe yield of the wells.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they're one and the same, and there may be some discrepancies on which report you look at. But the ones that we're using, and we'll go over that table, but the ones we're using, I think are the ones we sort of all landed on. We got to make sure that, yeah.
That's why I
But
want.
yeah,
I know our approved capacity is probably higher than what we're actually pumping at, so that's why I want to see.
yeah, I'll show you
Make
that.
sure we're talking about the right numbers here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll show you that.
Yeah, actually,
Wolf had a
I
question.
do have a question. So, and I hate bringing this up because I really don't like that at all, one bit. A couple of meetings ago, maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago, we talked about some charts that accumulated the billed quantity and compared it with the produced quantity. And there were some serious unaccounted for volumes that we talked about at the time, and we talked about that we need to find out what these are and where these go and why we're not accounting for them. That's something we haven't really touched since, but those numbers were so significant that I believe they were in the ballpark of those numbers that you just mentioned. So
They are
somehow,
in the summer. Yep.
in the summer, right, especially in the summer. So somehow we're seeing water disappear that we produce in the amount of the water that we're looking for to find. And I find that,
That's a lot.
I find that problematic.
For DES, and I think you have the raw numbers, you don't have the numbers that I work with Underwood on to account for that loss of water, whether it be flushing, street sweeping, all that. There are.
No, it went beyond that. We had a chart a couple months ago that included the flushing. And it still had beyond that losses that we didn't know, that were not accounted for.
Yes, you're right, Wolf. What that is, and that is something that sort of plays into it. But what that is exactly what you said. It's what is produced by the wells and what we know that is consumed, whether it's billed water to your consumers, or as Jill mentions, it's flushing or other things that we know we're using because it's required to run the system.
Right.
But so we count for all those, and that difference is the gap. And that gap that you're referring to is not a small amount in the summer in particular.
Yeah.
So what we're doing in this exercise here, and you're right that we should work towards figuring out that stuff. It could be a leak in a pipe. It could be people using water unauthorized.
Right.
So they need to be searched. But what we're using for this exercise is that higher line on that chart. We're assuming that once you find that, for now, that's the number that I'm using. So
I guess I'm just looking for something that puts a stake in the ground for some time in the near future to start really hunting that down, because, whoever watched that meeting a couple months ago and having us talk about making investments in the $1 million ranges to close that gap is going to scratch their head and it's going to say, we're losing money in one pocket, but we're trying to stuff the other pocket with rates, right? And that's just not going to sit well over time. We have to find that gap.
it's
And I
running
understand
around.
we can't answer that overnight. We have to put something in place to find that answer. But
Yeah.
I would like to have that on the radar for the next couple of meetings that we start talking about that too.
Yeah, and where it will become important is because it's running between 7 and 10% of your consumed numbers on an annual average. It's much higher in the summer, but it's on average. So it's not a small amount. If you're using 2 million gallons a day, it's 150,000 gallons. But
the peak demand is what worries us, right? We know we can handle this in the winter just fine, right?
Yeah.
The summertime is where we hurt.
So one of the things you will see, and when we start looking at this, and I think that stake in the ground will be when we start looking for capital cost money, there's going to be capital costs to new sources, whatever we decide they are. And then we will be comparing that to cost avoidance, conservation, or finding, these sources that shouldn't be on demands on your system, or at least if they are, they're paying for it. So that's when we'll want to really start looking at that too, because if you can avoid a new supply by using less, then it's cost avoidance. So yeah, that's part of that. It'll be kind of part of it. But for this exercise right now, Haven't gone there, but I think it's right that you bring it up because it is something that we will need to talk about.
Can I jump in real quick on that?
Yeah, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great point by Wolf. I think that, what do we need to do to look into that?
Well, it's leak detection. It's, if it's unauthorized use, then it's enforcement. It's, we did do, and it was about 15 years ago, Ron, Jill, maybe you remember, there was a report done, maybe we can dust it off and look at it, where we actually did some work to try to figure out where it was going. We called it I think it was simply called the Lost Water Study. We just went out and looked at metering inefficiencies or inaccuracies. We looked at, various things that maybe would have been,
I think it was a lost water study.
the low hanging fruit kind of things. Like, is it just is it a master meter at the well that's improperly reading, those kinds of things. And I don't think we were able to, at that point, find it, but it's going to take some investigation.
Do you have this?
From my perspective, I feel like that should be a priority. We can't spend all this money to treat the water and then lose 7 to 8% of it. That seems like a high number to me.
It was actually more than that.
The DES is, they allow up to 15% before they consider it like something you need to worry about from a regulatory perspective. But
Peak or annual?
annual,
Annual.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And what's unusual about Merrimack is you see most of that happening in, May, June, July, and August.
Right. Which just screams that somebody's having a plug somewhere, right? So.
So maybe it will be easy to find with enforcement. No, that's not lost on me, John and Wolf. That's a good point. And I think there'll be more. Certainly you want to look at and talk about how to find that.
I think it's important to look into. I just don't know, with everything else on everybody's plate, we're going to put something else aside to investigate this, or are we going to just add this onto the same plate with all the other food? I'm not saying we shouldn't. I just don't know how much we can do if Underwood's going to take a role in this.
Well, here's my suggestion on that, Don, is we are under contract to do this water supply option study. And so we've got 4 or 5 options or whatever they are that we're going to be looking at for this needed supply. We will keep on the table the cost avoidance one. If you actually go back to some of our previous water supply studies, we talked about it, conservation and finding ways to reduce the water. So part of this will prompt that next discussion, especially as we start looking at capital projects, that to find that next $500,000, they won't be, they're not going to be cheap. So if we can do it, that will be the time when we can talk about the worth and the value of searching for it. So I think as we develop the findings in this report, you'll see that as part of the discussion and our recommendations.
All right, good point.
And then it'll give you the catalyst, to avoid a several $1 million project to find 500,000 gallons a day. I wanted to just go through the history because this was the number. Right now, we don't know where it is. Right now, we haven't been able to find it. So we know if we don't, we have to plan for it. So let's just talk this. This is sort of the planning numbers. You're only in a study phase right now anyway. We're not doing any capital improvements yet. But this will help us get there. So 500,000 has historically been the source target, the target source we need. So right now, that's what we're going to use and continue to use as we compare options. And that's important because Mitchell Woods may or may not meet it. Manchester could, well, 3, maybe. So those are the things. So the next chart is the one I think, the next table, Dawn, is the one you were asking about, called the source capacities. It's actually a table. And it has each of your wells listed there with their rated capacities as we understand them.
Right.
We call it max yield, whether I think it's your permitted capacity, it's your sustained capacity. I think they're the same, at least for the purposes of this they are. We had well number 2 at 1,100 gallons a minute, well number 3 at 800. 7 and 8 at 1250, and wells 4 and 5 at 625 when they're done. We also threw Penachuk in here at 700 because we know that's a source that you have access to. If you just assume that they're all chugging at their proper rates, then you see the associated million gallons a day there.
Yeah.
On the next column. And then what you see on the third column, and you can cross out that June 2020 operations above that. That was a misleading statement. Really, it
I was
should
going
be.
to ask about that.
Yeah,
Because
not
I mean,
right.
And 4 and 5 didn't produce 100% either.
No. No, it was really only referring to the top 3 sources. That's why it probably doesn't belong there.
Right.
But in June of 2020, it's the only data I really had, and I think it's fairly consistent right now. Wells 2, Wells 3, and wells 7 and 8 are really producing a little bit below what those rated capacities are. And so they're listed there, 68 to 86%. Okay, and so that's the actual million gallons a day you're getting out of them right now. And Ron will tell you, and I think it's probably time that some of those get cleaned, and there's maintenance that would help improve that. So right now they're producing, on average between the 3 wells, about 78% of what their rated yields are. So and then the next column over is June 2020. That's really what we had access to because we know for a period of time Penachuk wasn't available, and wells 4 and 5, of course, were not available. So those were the only 3 sources as June, as we were entering the dry season and the summer season. Today, Penachuk's back online. They did some capital work over there to fix it, so that added 1 million gallons a day. And then when wells 4 and 5 come back online, they will get 0.9. So our capacities are ramping up. And the best way to see that is on the next graph, 11 by 17, that says draft MVD historical 5-day running average compared to 2020 available sources. This one's a good one. Those three lines, those 3 numbers we went over in the table are shown on the green line there. Okay, 3.57 was what was happening in June 2020 because we only had wells 2, 3, 7, and 8 working at around 78%. With Penachuk, you can go up to the next green line. We have 4.5 million gallons a day available to us. And when 4 and 5 comes back online, we get 5.47. And what I did with those, yeah.
Could we possibly share this?
Yeah.
On the screen so viewers can, and if it doesn't work today, maybe in the future, if you want to prepare for it, I don't want to put you on the spot. But
Well, no, I got it
charts-
up on my screen if I have the ability to share.
You do.
You want me to do that?
You have to give him permission somehow, or is it
You
already?
should
No.
automatically have it.
Be able to,
Yeah.
It looks like I have permission. I just want to make sure you wanted me to do that.
I think this chart is awesome to share because it
Okay,
shows the
then all
predicament we were in.
right, let me show it to you then. Let me call it up. Does that work?
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, looks good.
All right. So those 3 numbers I just referred to are shown on these green lines. And I think this might help. All right. So right in June, we had 3.57 because wells 2, 3, 7, and 8 were only working around 78%. Today with Penachuk, we have 4.57. And then in October, when wells 4 and 5 should come back online, we'd have 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
What we did here with this chart is it just shows your summer demands. It does not go through the winter stuff. So it talks about the peaks.
Yeah.
And we did a 5-day running average. So what we did is we said every day, we took the previous 5 days and did an average, previous 5 days and did an average. So what it does is it sort of adjusts and compensates a little bit for your tank turnover or your tank drawdowns and things, and sort of takes away some of these super peaks and so forth. But what it shows is this dark blue was this year. Okay, so we started out in May, things started ramping up in June, and then by the mid-June we were close to 4.5 million, at least on an average, on a 5-day running average. That exceeded what we were able to produce at the time. That's why we're getting tank drawdowns. You remember that. And then you put in the ban, and we drop back down to what our typical annual averages were, around 2 MGD. And then I think you must have lifted a ban or gone back to level 1 end of July, and that brought you back up here. You were okay at this point because we had Penachuk back working, so we're really under this green line.
Yeah.
Now, and then the other thing that this shows is I did the previous 3 years. So you got 2017 is yellow, 2018 is gray, and 2019 is orange. So you know, they vary a little bit, but generally you kind of see what happens, you know, consistently. And this is where I think, Dawn, you just said, I see 34% less consumption sales, and that's probably the area under this, between these lines.
Yeah, exactly.
This was the chart we needed all along. This is perfect.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then if you want, let me show you one more chart here, because before, did it stop sharing?
Nope.
No, you're there.
Okay. Does this one, do you see a different chart now?
Yep.
Okay, so I can flip back and forth. All right, so what happened is in June, we were seeing, you know, according to your pumping records, you were pumping around 4.5. But because we were dropping tanks down, we did this chart. This is just June. I think we put the same lines on here. But when we started getting into mid-June, we started seeing serious demands above your capacities. We knew that. But we actually saw 2 days in June of 5 MGD. You weren't producing that because you couldn't, but that's because you were drawing down your tanks at about 500,000 gallons a day. That's what Ron was telling you. My tanks are dropping. couldn't get it back up. And those were in the worst time of that was about, you were dropping about 500,000 gallons a day. So if you looked at what you were producing, 4.5, and the tank dropped down at 0.5, you had demands of 5 million gallons a day.
Yep.
And that even really was stressing. That even was really sort of getting close to stressing when Penachuk was available. So it was an extreme drought. We knew that. It still is. But this sort of shows you what happened in June. It's just important to know now, as we're going in with well 4 and 5, we're starting to increase those lines. You know, we're going to be up in here now when 4 and 5 comes back online. So that gives you some comfort. It's not online yet. But also, it sort of helps summarize the target numbers of why we're searching for 500,000 gallons a day more. And that was going to be the basis for the new sources. So the new sources we're looking at is the additional 500,000 gallons we need, plus the replacement of well number 3, which was 800 gallons a minute. So that's, wanted to explain all that because those are going to be the cost comparisons we're going to do in the water supply options. Should I stop sharing?
I got ahead of you. These are great. These are super informative.
Can I ask one question, Keith?
Yeah.
Is this one the demand or what we're producing?
We're using the word demands, which is really synonymous with production here. So it's not what you're selling. It's, you know, what Wolf was talking about earlier. It's what you're producing, what's either coming out of the wells or what you're buying from Penachuk. So demand, production. And then as a reminder, and I'll just sort of close on this and see if there's any other questions, but the source options that we're looking at are well number 3 replacement, Mitchell Woods, artificial recharge at 4 and 5, and then Manchester Waterworks. And I'm actually going to add in looking at Penachuk a little bit closer too as a wholesale agreement, because if you remember, we have access to Manchester and Penachuk as emergency sources at retail rates, but if they ever they're not a permanent reliable source until you actually purchase those long-term rights as a wholesale customer. So we'll look at that too. And they've been looked at before, but it will be updated.
Keith, just a little information on that. When you talk about wholesale rates, are you obligated to pay for whatever a certain amount is, like a half million gallons a day, 360 days a year? Or is it just like peak period? How does, if we don't use it, do we still pay for it?
Probably not for the water, but you may have a base charge, just like you charge your customers for a meter, whether they use water or they don't. You would have
Okay.
that kind of a, yeah.
So it's like a flat rate plus then usage on top of that or something?
Yeah, and let's say we put in a 6 or 8 inch meter, you'd have that meter charge, presumably. This would all be worked out, but this is normally how it would work. You'd pay the 8-inch meter charge because it's ready for you. They have to maintain the meter. It's probably going to be their meter. In the case of Manchester, in the case of Pennachuck, it is. I think Ron will tell me right now you're paying a meter charge for Pennachuck too, and but you don't pay for any water unless you use it, and only for what you use.
Okay.
There would be a minimum you would have to buy though, right? Is there a minimum and a max?
I don't think so. I mean, there isn't there isn't now in Pennachuck, as but we're only paying for retail rates. It may depend on how we structure it with them. In the past, when we've talked about it with Pennachuck, I don't think there was a minimum. But again, that would we'd have to flush that out as we revisit it again with them.
Because we clearly have more than we need in the winter, or even for probably, 7, 8 months of the year. And it wouldn't want to have to buy water from an auxiliary source all year long, because then there's just less water of our own water that we can sell. So I'm just not real familiar with those agreements. It's beyond what we're talking about here. I just figured I'd ask, but.
And we'll flush some of that out,
Yeah,
Don,
okay.
so it'll be in, yep.
Okay.
All right, I'll stop sharing unless there's any other questions.
Everybody good? Everybody else good? All right.
All right, well, that was good. That was all I had. I just wanted to just explain that because it's an important one as we look at these options.
Yeah, this brings something back to my memory in speaking with John a month or so ago. John had asked me about what's the feasibility of analyzing a option where we would run water from the Bedford connection with Manchester over to the Wells 4 and 5 treatment plant instead of artificial recharge, and still put that water through our carbon filters. And the assumption would be that the carbon would filter out the chloramines, and then we could just rechlorinate after the carbon filters and put it into the system. We'd certainly need a pump to pressurize it though, I believe, in any event. But with that, I don't know if that length of main would that we need to run from basically the Bedford line to Wells 4 and 5 would be cost prohibitive or not. Is
Yeah,
that-
John had mentioned that to me, and we'll run it. But I mean, without answering that specifically, here's why I'm showing you some of these charts, because if we need 500,000 gallons a day, the answer to that question is probably no, it's not cost effective, right? It's just a lot of cost for a low amount of water that you need. But if let's say we decide we want to go to Manchester instead of replacing well number 3, and now we're talking 1.5 million gallons a day, right, for Manchester. Maybe it is. Of course, there's some technical issues with the GAC and the chloramines and the size of the plant, whatever. But
right.
the point is, it's important to know what we're chasing, because if we can find a source like Manchester that says, hey, and I'm not saying that they will, I think they can give you 1.5 million, then maybe those kinds of solutions are more cost effective. But when you start saying, I'm only going to need 500,000 gallons a day, then it becomes very expensive for that kind of infrastructure. So that's why it's important just to understand what we're chasing for source water. But we are going to look at that. John had mentioned it to me. And so I see Manchester kind of having a couple sub options, for option A, B, maybe even a C.
Right, okay. All right, thanks.
Well, thank you. I'll listen in.
Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So I guess, Pete, were you going to take it from here to talk about the rest of capital projects?
I'll carry you through, well, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 2, and then Keith will probably jump back in a little bit on Turkey Hill. So, so on 4, 5, we're getting close to being completed. So we are doing the final SCADA confirmation testing tomorrow and Wednesday. The SCADA integrator has installed everything, he has tested it, but he has not proven it to us. So we are, we need to go through and verify all the different, lockout, situations and stuff like that, to make sure everything works out. So we're going to be doing that tomorrow and Wednesday. The final Ken feed testing is supposed to be tomorrow. The HVAC startup is going to be on Wednesday. The well testing results, water quality testing that is, has been submitted to DES and we're waiting results on that. We do need to do bacteria nitrate samples. We're looking to do those tomorrow and then the results in a few days. So if everything works out, we could be online by the end of the week, but probably we're going to be early to mid next week we'll be online.
Good.
Yeah. So that's that one. Anybody have any questions on that?
Has there been any involvement with any of our operators in any of this?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, yes.
Like looking through the PLC screens and if
Yep.
there's any,
Every time there's a start, if they're proving, they'll prove, like the SCADA they're gonna prove that to Pete tomorrow. We'll have, more likely have a crew there as
all
well.
right, good.
And yeah, through the whole process from the
So
start.
I'm assuming if there's like a PLC program change that needs to be made, is that something that can be done? Is there a PLC programmer that if something needed to be changed or something, or how would that go about?
Yeah, so if you had to change some of the programming, you would have to get an integrator to do that, to come in and do that. And you have had A&D Instruments come in and do some of that stuff that, in the past. Some of the things are going to be operator adjustable, such as some set points, in the program. Some of the delays, you can operator adjustable on delays for alarms and that type of thing. So typically if you have an alarm going out, you don't want that to have a 0 second delay on it, because then you get a lot of nuisance alarms. So a lot of times you'll just have a delay, whatever, 10, 20 seconds or something. So if it's a constant, signal for, a certain amount of time, then I'll send out an alarm. So then a lot of times we'll have those operator adjustable so they can kind of play around with those, those set points, and stuff like that. So there are some things that the operator can be doing, and that's typical on any plant. And you have that over at your well 7-8 iron and manganese plant right now, the same type of thing.
All right.
But if you wanted to go in there and change, how something was controlled or that type of thing, and you would have to get an integrator to do that work.
Okay. All right, so what's next for well 7 and 8?
Yeah, and then on 4, 5 on the startup, just to
Okay.
add a little bit to what Ron mentioned. Yeah, so they've been out there for all the startup. So the HVAC stuff, when we start, get that all started up, they'll be out there, getting trained by the rep on there, and we videotape all those startups.
Good.
Then that is something that gets turned over to the district at the end of the project. So then you can always go back and look at those startup videos and instead of saying what did that guy say when this happens, and you're trying to figure that out a year later or something like that, you can actually physically go back. Then you'll have all the O&M manuals along with that. But But they are getting trained on every piece of equipment and stuff like that as we're going along, and we try to space those out so we're not overloading them with all the kinds of things in one day. You know, they can kind of, you know, come there for one piece, get trained, you know, then come back another day to do something else.
All right, good.
Okay, let's then jump to 7 and 8. Contractor is moving along pretty good on that. The back of the building has been excavated. The below slab piping has been installed and pressure tested. The slab reinforcing is being installed right now with the goal of pouring the slab on Wednesday of this week. And then they're going to move right into the foundation walls, and they're planning on pouring that, you know, sometime next week. They were initially looking at next Wednesday. So far, the weather looks good. You know, we're not going to have any rain days, which is bad for the groundwater, but good for construction. So they're moving along pretty good. So then the next thing is then they'll have, you know, backfill around the building and then get the mason in. So hopefully the mason is gonna, you know, be able to meet his schedule and come in and do the work. But he's moving along nicely with that, you know, a little bit ahead of what he had for his schedule. So
Good to hear.
our fingers crossed that that continues, but you never know what, you know, one sub can, you know, push you back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
That one's going well.
Any questions on wells 4 and 5, anybody? No?
Ribbon cutting,
7 and 8?
grand opening, ribbon cutting.
Oh, yeah, that.
We have to talk about it sometime.
Yeah.
I know it's a touchy subject because it's easy to stick a foot in the mouth on that one, right?
Yeah.
But
I think it'd be nice to do an open house and
I think we should be
maybe,
doing it. It'll probably,
before it's stored or something. Yeah,
it probably should be happening before the frost comes, right? Or the snow comes.
Yeah. Well, let's get it up and running, and then
Right.
maybe in the,
yeah, sometime in October or some point.
yeah.
Well, we would have to.
Was there ribbon cutting on the well 7 and 8 treatment plant, or is that customary or not?
We never did. Something that I would have liked to have done. I would have liked to have an open house there. We were thrown right into that was put online, and we were thrown right into PFAS.
Yeah, okay.
That was just,
All right.
there was no time. We couldn't do anything. It was just,
That's definitely something worth celebrating.
Yeah.
4 and 5. So we should be doing something.
Yeah,
Right.
Wolf, if I could ask real quick, what were the challenges, just so I understand, you were of doing one? Was there some challenges, or is that just because of the COVID stuff too?
Well, COVID is one thing, and that actually might be a good reason to wait until spring, you know, until things have been, you know, that might not be a bad idea.
everything is finished.
Everything's finished.
It's online and working. Yeah.
And we know where we stand with COVID, maybe more than today, right? There's, I don't know how to word that without offending everybody and their brother.
The other party involved.
Gotcha.
Well, obviously we have, you know, the Drinking and Groundwater Trust Fund to thank for contributions. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
We clearly have people that fought hard and long for PFAS filtration that should be included in this. Then the next question is which. Let me just say which elected officials should be part of that, right? And as we know, some positions have changed over the last 2 or 3 years regarding PFAS. So, are we inviting people or not inviting people that had a drastically different position towards PFAS 2 or 3 years ago when this project started, right? Or do we embrace their new position on the PFAS situation and invite them? Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah.
I think I follow.
Right. So I don't want to throw out any names, but basically the question is, you know, who do we invite that has been supporting this early on enough that it's fair to invite them, right? So
Okay, yeah, that's good. No, I understand.
it's a little bit tricky. So
All right, well, I guess we'll just think about that over the next meeting or so.
Yeah, because you want to give it a little bit of time, even though we are going to be going online, in the next, week and a half. There are going to probably be some bugs that we have to work out and all that kind of stuff. So, if you're trying to, you could actually do it, if you were going to do something late October, I guess. I don't know, is that too cold? But you do want to give some time. But the COVID issue is also something to consider to, if people are going to want to walk through the plant and all that kind of stuff, how spaced out do you give them, and I know Brian has expressed some concerns when we did the New Hampshire Waterworks construction day of the people actually being inside of his building and that type of thing.
well, plus if we do it in spring, then we're going to have some landscaping that's some grass that grew in. It's
Actually, the grass is
really
taken off of, it's incredible, yeah. Not a stitch of water on it, and it's growing incredible.
did you irrigate?
We did not.
All right, let's move on
okay.
because we're getting way behind on this meeting now. But what are we up to? Wells 2 and 3?
Yeah, so Wells 2. So we we had that work session that whatever, a little over a week ago, and we have looked into. So the one thing that we really wanted to look at was the electrical loads, going down to the building.
Yeah.
What the additional cost was on that. So I had some people working on that last week. I was on vacation myself last week. So I tried to coordinate a little bit of that today. Unfortunately, one of the people that was doing a lot of the work, he was also on vacation today too. So we're going to be getting together tomorrow and finding that out. But we are, just about, at a point where we'll have a decent idea of what that additional cost is and where to go with that. So how do we, I guess on that one, how do you want to proceed with that? Do we talk to Ron about, how much extra capacity we put in there and that type of thing, or?
If we can maybe get an email out to the
Okay.
commissioners and know what your, what the numbers are that we're looking at. I know for the additional electrical capacity, it's going to be this much money, and that's kind of what we asked you to research, correct?
Right, yeah, because I think that, the building, the chem feed portion of it, I think we were all set because we sort of set on some capacities and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at least the capacity of the aquifer that we are planning on, taking water out of. So then the only variation would be, what size pump do we stick in each one of the wells and that type of thing. So we are looking at some different options with those and seeing how much, when you make any, changing from one scenario to the other, what does that do to cost? And some of them might, really be no cost in terms of electrical upgrade. It just be a little bit with your pump, but other ones might require you to boost up into main service entrance size might be increased, or wire size might be increased from the treatment plant down, and that type of thing. So that's what we're looking at. So
maybe
we
if
can
you
put
get,
it into it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can get a report out to Ron, and so you can get that around. But I think what you're saying is you need direction to move forward on the design, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to necessarily wait till the October meeting.
Oh, no,
So
because what we wanted, what we talked, so I went back after we had that meeting, I sent an email out to our team, and just because we delayed it, and I said, okay, so I said, if we get something finalized by, like early this week, can we, meet somewhat of like an early November timeframe? And people, were in agreement with that they felt like they could do that. So it's like, okay, so we need to sort of make that, decision, so then we could proceed with that.
Probably something we can
So if I get
agree over email.
that's what
right?
general consensus, I can
Yeah,
initiate it and
yeah.
Yeah.
especially if it's just, boiled down to that kind of one item, are we in favor of spending the extra money for the additional capacity? We can all kind of just weigh in yes or no, and then, that could be a legal vote by email. We've done that before.
Okay.
Instead of having to call a special meeting or something like that, which, if there was more to discuss, if there was more stuff involved, then we could have a special meeting like we did last month. But
Yeah.
if it's just that one issue, maybe let's try to see if we can pin it down by email.
I think we can, yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
sounds good.
Yeah, because it'll be mostly like I'm envisioning sort of a little table with the different different pump capacities in each well, then sort of like a little list of pros and cons and that type of thing. So it's going to be fairly simple, and I think everybody sort of understands the issue. So it's not like we have to go through and really explain the whole issue. So if we just lay out sort of that table and that little pros and cons and a little verbiage after that, I think it would be fairly straightforward and simple to look at. Then we can, and if people have questions, we can even, I don't know if you want to do a Zoom meeting or anything like that too, but
Yeah, I mean, let's see what the feedback is. If it's
Okay.
straightforward, then we'll just do it by an email vote. If people have a lot of questions, and maybe we'll set up a Zoom or something.
Okay, super.
All right? Everybody agree with that? So commissioners, you might be getting an email and whenever this week, late next week, whenever. Just, take a look at that and let us know what your feelings are, and we can do an official vote that way, I think. All right.
So that's it. That's anybody, any more questions on well 2?
No, I don't think so. You? No? Okay.
Yeah, so just one other thing I'll just throw in on well 2 is we are looking to finalize by the end of the month the sort of I think we talked about this a while ago. So we had a preliminary design report where we were kind of doing wells 2 and 3 as a combined project, and we had sort of 30% design and sort of a basis of design going forward with that. So what we're going to do is sort of do a supplement to that on why we ended up at well 2, just so we have sort of the history and sort of memorializing how we got from one to the other. So we're looking at, but we need to sort of nail down some of these things because that all relates to that report. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it back to you, Keith, for Turkey Hill.
Just a quick update. Things are, Tim and Steve and Joel gave me a quick update just to share with you, but things are happening a little bit quicker now that the pump station's getting ready for delivery. So there's a factory test tomorrow, the fabricated station in the factory. So I think maybe Ron, maybe you're witnessing it, but I know our guys are through video, and it should be shipping in October. Right now, the target is that they'll start shipping on October 9th. So more happening there. And so hopefully that'll be wrapping up in the next couple months.
Good.
So that's all I had.
I think before you guys, I think that was the end of what you guys needed to discuss with us, right?
Right.
Before you left, I just didn't know if there was anything in that
To-do list.
action items list that we have that might have crossed off the list, if I can find it.
All the way back.
It's after the minutes, isn't it?
It's all the way back here.
Okay. So just going through here, we'll see what's for Underwood. There was a thing in here about investigating any warranty consequences if we mix the vessels in media manufacturers. Does that ring a bell with you guys?
It does. I felt like did we answer that one at the meeting, or was there an expectation to get more documentation from the contractor on that? Because I know when we met with the vendors, they said that there wouldn't be.
All right, I mean, we're having an echo somewhere.
There's another computer dialed in.
So you don't think there's a, an issue with any warranty then?
No, I think what we talked about is that the manufacturer's warranty for the equipment was a year. And we basically knew that the media that we're going to have in there is plus or minus going to be there a year. So after, if we decide to change manufacturers of the media, the warranty would have essentially expired anyway.
Yeah, I think we discussed that last time. I don't know why we didn't cross this off. I thought there might have been something else to follow up on or something, but
That's what I'm wondering, unless I missed something, but
I don't think so. I mean, if everybody's in favor of crossing off this number 3 for action item, I think that addresses the answer to that one. So I guess that one can probably be crossed off. I know you guys are still working on the radio transmission, whether that's a better option than or using something else than radio transmission. That was part of your ESR number 50, so that's probably going to carry on, right?
yeah, and that'll be wrapped into any bid. Any improvements will be wrapped into the bid for well 2.
I would actually say we can scratch this off because we have an ESR now out there to handle this. This was prior to the ESR.
Yeah.
And we have the ESR as an open order, it's an open action item, for you guys in general as part of your contract. So that's kind of redundant and it just keeps it short. So I'd be in favor of scratching that.
So if it's going to be covered in that report that's going to come out as part of the ESR 50 that you guys are working on, then maybe we can take it off of this action item list.
Yeah, because it's now our action item.
Yeah,
Right.
number 4.
Yeah, the action item list was really meant for things that aren't set in stone, right? Or, that aren't set in motion, right?
Just so things aren't lost.
Right.
And if that's going to be captured in your report, then that should address it, I guess.
I'd take it off.
All right. And the only other item that had your name, your Underwood on here was number 17, which is just to investigate other contracts to aid MBD with stronger contract language. And I don't know when that would happen, but
If it's going to happen, it would happen when we bid well 2.
Right.
next contract.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just leave that on and that'll come back and we'll remember to address that at some point.
And then Dawn, do you want to add rate, the rate eval, since that we don't have a contract for that or a scope, so that would be something we'd want to target for November. I put it in my calendar for a November meeting to get something to you guys.
Okay. Amanda, catch that one? All right.
Always.
Amanda says on 8/17, they chose to keep number 3.
Did. Okay. I think we just agree to eliminate 3 and 4
Right.
at today's meeting. And we'll go through this again later in the meeting. I just figured I'd get Underwood on there because they were on the list at this time, so.
And if you have questions, you want to unmute.
If I have questions,
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I don't have a question, but I do have it marked in my notes from the last meeting that you did choose to keep that one on. I can't listen to it right now over this recording, but I can pull it up and let you know why you chose that. If you want me to look into that more, but if you're just choosing to clear it out, that's fine too.
I think we're good with just clearing it out. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The one last thing I wanted to bring up, just a follow up from the last discussion we had last month, was I did call Jeff Daly, and actually he had Lou Niles call me about that, the Zeolite Media and the RSSCT columns studies that are being done. He doesn't have a report for us. Again, I want to contact XTD Labs. I want us to contact STD Labs directly. So I do have a name of a contact over there. It's and I can give you this in a separate email, but I guess I'm running this by the other commissioners here because if Underwood is willing to give a call over to XTD Labs, XTD, I would like to find out if we can get our water tested with some zeolite. And I don't know if we can do this in our own test columns, if those are going to be set up at wells 4 and 5 in the treatment plant. Like, who would know how to run those? Is that something you guys could do, or is that something when I'm, I guess there needs to be like a standardized procedure, right, on how to do that. So I think maybe we can start with, I would like to have somebody from Underwood give XTD a call. And so Lou told them that we would be calling them, so they should be expecting our call. And he said he gave them freedom to divulge information on this one particular test that they're doing for us. So they can probably give you some kind of bed volumes, and I'd like to know how to set up those columns with zeolite. And if we can either contract with them directly to have some of our water tested on that zeolite media, or if we can figure out how to do our own testing at wells 4 and 5. I know we have those columns that were supposed to be in there. I don't even know if they're there yet or not, but, and I don't know who is capable of running a test like that.
Yeah, so the columns are not there and they weren't designed into the project. An area was left for them.
Oh, okay.
And a waste line was included that you could just dump it into there, which would go out to the infiltration basin. And then a water feed line was run from the back of the vessels from the treated water, over to that area.
So could we test other wells, or would we want to test that water, I guess?
Yeah, so that would be, it would come off the raw water lines from wells 4 or 5, and then you would,
Okay.
just connect up to that pipe that would run over to it, and then you would have to set those columns up. So we did not do any, we didn't want to add any, we didn't want to add that additional cost to the project.
Right.
But we said, okay, so adding another drain line over there, that's peanuts. And adding a pipe underneath the slab is peanuts. So we said, okay, let's give the option to do something over there. And then if you wanted to do it, then then there's the wall space there to set it up and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll email, who do you want me to email? You, Pete, or Keith?
Yeah, email myself and Peter, and we'll call them. It sounds like we'll ask for the zeolite results that they did do for Lou.
Right.
And we'll even if we decide to do it ourselves, we can ask them to offer up the protocol or the costs associated with testing the water.
Yeah, maybe seek a proposal from them if they want to tell us how much it would cost for them to test our water on the zeolite media. It'd be just good. I mean, just to find out what the cost is. Does it make sense to try this? And just to put to bed once and for all the comparison against carbon and see if it's better, worse, or the same, or what,
But aren't we back to the same question that we don't know the scalability, and because they never answer that?
Well, I think it's now that it's an RSSCT test, that might be, maybe that's something you can ask them about too, is how would they scale up the results to full scale?
Will do. Yeah, I mean, if they did one, they must have had some protocol. We can ask them more about how they did it.
And if you're not comfortable with XTD, maybe if there is a specific procedure that they are following, maybe we can run that to whichever labs that we've used to do our own SSCT tests, which is not XTD. It's one of the other, I forget the other name of it, but maybe you can have them look into doing zeolite using their method or something. I don't know. I
do.
It seemed like it was new information that they had these tests done. And I'd like to know if it's possible for us to do it. And I'd rather just do it ourselves because it gets the vendor out of the way of, the guy's trying to sell us the media and he's involved in testing it. That just doesn't work right. So.
No, that's right. No, I agree. And I think I'll definitely be interested in the results that XTD has on the work they did. So I think it's important we talk to XTD. It sounds like they did something. And so
Right.
if he's given permission to release it, then let's
Yeah.
get it.
It's a guy named Scott Crawford, and they are located at 22 Marin Street in Stratham, New Hampshire. Marin, Marin Street.
Oh,
So
that's not far from us, yeah.
I got his, yeah, that's what I figured. So I got his phone numbers and stuff. I can email it to you. All right.
Very good.
All right. I think that was all I had for Underwood. So if anybody else has anything, bring it up now, or are you guys going to hang around, or are you going to leave the call at this point?
Probably mute and hide and listen.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. All right. So we're ready to move on with Jamie. How you doing, Jamie? Oh,
Oh, I think you're muted.
you got to unmute.
Jamie, you gotta unmute yourself.
I think you're muted. Hopefully you're still muted.
There you are.
No, he's not.
You want to mute him?
Still muted.
He is having such a long. I'm trying to
He's jumping around. We can't hear you, Jamie. We're trying to figure out why.
No.
My God, he's having such a hard time. You should be unmuted.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Well, everybody else can talk, right?
How about that?
Much better.
Ah,
Go.
that works.
Okay, technology. I don't know. I've been trying to get on for a half an hour, and the Zoom wouldn't let me in only as an attendee, so they put me out in the lobby and said, "You're not welcome."
Wow.
So
That means you had the wrong link, doesn't it?
something happened. I
Then
don't
there's a
know.
panelist.
Yeah.
He was-
I finally got in on the link that I had, but it just 15 times. 15th was a charm. Anyways. I'll
Well, you didn't
start
hold us
wherever you
back
want
at
me
all.
to start.
You didn't hold us back at all, so that's good.
I'm glad. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. But anyways, I'm here, and I'll let you decide what you want me to speak on first.
Well, I guess you want to take them in order. We got the exploratory drilling on Natticook Brook.
Okay. Yeah. So as the last time we spoke, you asked me to put together a proposal. I did, and I submitted it for the package. You should have it. And what I did was go through the process of what we would have to do to go through the preliminary approval process. That really essentially means we got to put in some piezometers. Then we install one of 3 well diameter types, and I had put in an 8-inch well, a 12-inch well, and an 18-inch well as options. And then we would go through the preliminary pumping test. I put in a 5-day pumping test to begin the process of determining what the potential impact would be on the wetlands. And since well MBD2 is already in place, that didn't have to go through this process, but because we're putting a new one, we'll have to demonstrate that we're not having an adverse impact on the local wetlands. The prices were a little closer than I expected, to be honest with you. The drilling of the 8-inch well, testing, and so forth came out to be about $77,000, and then to do the 18-inch well, I got one. I only was able to get one price, but I think that price is from someone who usually is the low price. So I think it would end up being more expensive with other contractors, but it was about $100,000 difference. And so what is the difference in that? Essentially, you would end up having a production well with the 18-inch well in place, taking the risk that we would be able to get through the permitting process with the state without any other issues. And then there's a middle ground that you could probably take, and that's the 12-inch well, which would be the 118 task 2, whereby we could use that as you're not going to full risk venture. We could use the 12-inch well as a production well and still pump in the order of 600 gallons a minute, and possibly more. And then the 8-inch well is the typical process. So, I think the bottom line is what's our risk tolerance for failure? We don't, from the water quality standpoint, the data, as you've seen, and also we submitted, you have the report that we prepared for the Natticook Brook work that we had completed. The water quality, the preliminary water quality is excellent. The saturated thickness is excellent. The property is owned for both 1A and 1D, and except for a small sliver of land that would make up the 400 protective radius. So risk factor wise, it's not, I don't think it's super high risk, but the state, has the right and the authority to say, no, we don't like it, or there are, when we get into the pumping test, not before we get into the pumping test, but as we get into the pumping test, if we see some impacts on the wetlands, they may require us to withdraw less water. There's a whole host of things that the state could be inclined to ask us to do. So, I don't really have an opinion on this, except that if you want to, if you feel confident that you don't think there's enough risk, then we could go straight to the 18-inch well. If you want to go in between, I'd go with the 12-inch well, and if you want to be risk adverse, I'd go with the 8-inch well. And quite frankly, I think there's nothing wrong with doing the 12-inch well. I think there's some value there. I've thought about this since we had our last conversation. I mean, I think there's value in all three. I don't take away anybody's intent on this, but I do think a 12-inch well would be a reasonable decision to make, and kind of split the risk factors.
But that would limit us to somewhere around 600 gallons a minute, you think?
Probably 600, 700 gallons a minute. And at this point, that's going to be, that's a lot of water at that location with well number 2. We know we have an interference with well number 2. It's about a half a foot during each pumping cycle. One of the things I'm going to show you, if I can share the screen in a minute, I'm going to show you the critical water levels in each of the aquifers in terms of the monitoring that's been done, so you can kind of see which wells are near the critical levels and which ones are not. Well number 2 is not at a critical water level or even close to it, so it does indicate that we can take more water out of that system without too much fanfare. But of course, all that testing has got to be done to determine that.
So let me ask you one question that occurred to me was, you had mentioned how the DES still has to approve all this, and they, depending on how they cage their approval, they could limit us from what we could pump if there's interference with wetlands and whatnot. So there is a little bit of a risk there, but my understanding of the new well source approval process is there's a preliminary approval that the DEP issues to begin with.
DES, yeah.
DES. What has been their involvement in this work so far? Are they aware that we're looking for a new well source in this area, and have they seen any of this preliminary information, or at what point do you? I'm trying to see if we can get a better level of comfort from them at this point, as much as we can.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But the state has been, I've been down this road a number of times. The state is not going to weigh in any more than just the site itself until they see actual data. Yeah. So in other words, they're going to say, well, we have a lot of confidence in your ability to select sites. Now, but we're not going to let you know our opinion on this until we see some data to make a decision on.
Right.
So I think, though, but to your point, Don, I really would like to have the state walk the site, and that's one of the things I have in my first task when we do the piezometers, just to get down there and take a look at it.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is there hasn't been like a concern presented yet from the DES at any point yet.
No,
Not that
and
there will be,
we
but-
really, yeah, no, we haven't. They haven't expressed the concern, but we really haven't gone into any level of detail until we
Yeah.
had made a determination that this is something we really want to do. And I
Okay.
think that it's, I think they're going to be encouraged by the site. I think they're going to be all encouraged by the data. I haven't, we could submit the data to them for this, for this report and just let them know that this is where we're going. I wanted the board to be able to see that data, more than just the presentation. So that's why I submitted that document.
Yeah.
But I also think that the money, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound trivial about it, but the money is probably not the biggest issue. I mean, we're only, I don't want to say only, but we are only talking about $100,000 in difference. And so in the light of the big picture that you're dealing with here, and the urgency that you have in terms of trying to develop an alternative source,
And Jamie,
I don't think it's huge, but sorry.
it wouldn't, if we were to drill an 8-inch well now, and if you were to remobilize later to drill an actual production well, the cost wouldn't be $100,000. It would exceed $100,000.
Right. So the 177, it'd be whether or not
Be on top of
the 80, yeah, the 8-inch well will be an additional 77,000.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if we were to drill an 8-inch well and a couple months later, or maybe next summer, we find that this is really the way we want to go, and you need to drill an 18-inch well, our cost wouldn't be $100,000 for that new drill.
No, it would be 177.
That's right.
Right.
So, I mean,
that's
considering that we're
risk.
going to the same aquifer, we're going in a similar area that we are already in, we're replacing an existing well. We're not complementing it. We're replacing it. We're not going into any majorly protected areas, right? There is no known flora or fauna that's protected in that area, right?
I don't believe so.
Plus, it's not like we're building.
So what Wolf is asking about is, that's why I was kind of asking you about the preliminary approval from DES.
Right.
I've done a few wells in New Hampshire, and usually you got to get them to approve the conceptual, I forget what they call it. It's more of, you have to present, they have to look at the site, make sure that there's nothing site-wise that's going to prevent this location from having a well put in. Have we done any of that with them, and can we use, are you planning on doing that? This report that you've presented here is something that I think has a lot of detail in it. I don't know if DES would review this at this point and also look at your scope of work in this proposal, because typically from what I understand is you normally propose a scope of work. At DES, you kind of want them to buy into it so that when you're executing that scope of work and then you do a report on the results of that scope of work, the DES is, when you submit it to them, they've already kind of had some input on this, and they might not, otherwise look at it and say, oh, well, we wanted you to do a test well over here, or
I mean,
at
they
what
don't.
point what point and to what level are you planning on involving them before this work is done?
So DES doesn't really operate that way. That is, in some ways, in the same with the DEP, is that in the exploration process, they do not weigh in on that. They weigh in at the time that a utility has made a decision that they want to pursue a spot, and that it is, there is sufficient evidence to support that location. And then the process through the large groundwater withdrawal permitting process is very detailed and very rigorous. And if you go through the regulations, which we've done 100 times, we've done it more than all the other consultants combined in New Hampshire. The process doesn't really give you a lot of wiggle room. In other words, it's a menu. There's a lot of work to be done, but it's a menu that you've got to go through to demonstrate that indeed there's sufficient water there and of good quality and doesn't impact the wetlands. So in other words, they might say to you, we're concerned about the wetlands, but they would do that for any well that's next to a wetlands. Now, one of the things we do have to go through, so we have to go through the process, and what I've done in this proposal is to address what we think on a preliminary basis now. So the process, just me kind of go backwards. Process is for us to put in the well, do the pumping test, identify the preliminary impacts, and then identify the preliminary zone of contribution and impacts to other wells. We present that to them. Then that goes to all the towns nearby. They can hire their consultants to evaluate it and assess it. DES will take those. If a town or a community system says, like Pennachuck, I want it to go to a public hearing, then that preliminary report goes to a public hearing. And then the state takes all those comments from the town and from anybody else, private citizens, and they will write their comment letter. Then the next step of the final report, the next step is to do usually you put in your production well, then you do your long-term pumping test, then you do your final environmental impact assessment based on all the comments that have come in, and then they give you the large groundwater withdrawal permit. So it is, like you said, Don, it's a two-stage process, preliminary and final, but the state has been very careful in not weighing in until they have a pumping test or data to support. But I do think that it would be worthy of submitting the report to them and asking them to come down and take a look at the site. Because, and I know they're not going to give us a fatal flaw window. They're not going to say, no, this is not possible. They're just going to reiterate what we already know what we have to do. But if that made people feel more comfortable, I'd be happy to do it. I'm planning on doing that before I put the piezometers in, because I will select 3 locations for piezometers and let them know that on a preliminary basis, they're not going to require us to do anything on a preliminary basis. What we're doing is on our own interest to make sure that we don't have a problem going down the road. So I hope that answers that question, but it isn't something that they're going to weigh in on up front. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to give you a conceptual approval.
I thought they had to give you a conceptual approval before you did the permanent well. That's the way the regulations are written, as far as I know.
They have to give you a preliminary approval before you put in your final well, and that's why I'm saying it's a risk.
Yeah.
You can jump the gun and put the final well in, but I'm saying the risk is that they could come back after the preliminary and say, no, we don't think so. But they're not going to come down to the site tomorrow and say, no, we don't think so.
But it's really a $27,000 risk, because either we pay $100,000 more now, right? Or we pay $177,000 more later.
It is it's a $77,000 risk. Yeah.
Well, but even that, how much of tasks 3 and 4 would you have to do a second time if we were to take a 2-step approach?
Well,
I'm thinking there's some cost that we're not seeing here yet, because, usually please don't take this the wrong way, but usually you quote sequentially, right? You don't put the whole cost in front of the board because it's a sequential process. So my concern is, if we were to take a step-by-step approach, installing a test well first, our ultimate cost to end up with a production well exceeds those 77,000.
Yeah. So I did put it in the email to when I sent over the package, that my estimate for taking it beyond this point, I really think it's going to be another $150,000 to get to the large ground withdrawal permit process. But let's assume for the moment it's $200,000. I think that you're going to get a large groundwater withdrawal permit for close to 1 million gallons a day, if everything goes right, for a little under probably under $500,000, 400, somewhere in that 400,000, which is about what we're looking at for other towns. This is a little bit more because the depth is greater in terms of the thickness of the deposits, but it's going to be around that $400,000 range, 400 to 500,000.
Can I ask on the time frame? Is there a big time
It was a
benefit
yes,
to
right?
going straight to the 24-inch well?
Yeah, so the 24-inch well is going to take, it's going to take probably 2 months to drill, to put in. Time frame for the permitting, John, is about 2 years. I mean, it's about a 2-year process to get a new groundwater withdrawal permit in play. Now, if everything goes perfectly, you know, we might be able to get this thing done in about 15 to 18 months, but that would be going as fast as possible when everything goes perfectly right. But because of the timing of the way the state works with regards to public comment, public hearing, response to public comments and so forth, there's something like, I've forgotten, 120-day period, minimum, or 120 to 150-day period that is in the comment process for just the preliminary hydro report. Now, if a public hearing isn't asked for, that cuts down the timing quite a bit. And I don't know right now what the appetite is for people to ask for a public hearing.
Yeah. I don't know who's around there that would be concerned.
I guess I didn't hear an answer fully to my question, and I understand that may not be possible, but it sounds to me as if we would go straight to a production well. We would pay $100,000 now in addition to what we would have to pay at this stage. But it also sounds to me as if we're saving some overhead cost on your end, because you can, you know, submit the actual data of the production well already as test data, right? So our test data is already on a production well level. Wouldn't that eliminate one round of proving? No?
No, state requires a preliminary review and approval and a final review and approval.
Right, okay.
And they offer up offer up the opportunity for modifications to be made based on the public hearing, based on citizens' input, on the data that's submitted as part of the preliminary, to then incorporate that information into the final pumping test. So I think, well, what I hope I'm answering is that if you went with the production well and it was 200, let's just say it's $269,000, right? Let's say you go with that. Then we get all the input from the public hearing. We have to put in a couple more monitoring wells or something to that end based on someone's concerns. We do the test, we do the final environmental assessment. Then I think, you know, we're talking about another probably in the order of 150, but not more than $200,000. So your total number would be in the 469 as a max number to get you over the large ground withdrawal permit process. And you know, hopefully that the comments that come in aren't, you know, overwhelming and then less work has to be done. So my hope is that we, you know, that nobody asked for a public hearing, because that eliminates some of the costs, because that becomes problematic. Now, I don't, you know, it's about a 50-50 break for us in terms of when public hearings are asked for and when they're not. I mean, we just went up and did the Plymouth, and we thought people were going to come out. They wrote in comments, but nobody asked for the public hearing, but we took in their comments. So.
I'm almost hearing that what you're saying is that it could be that the public comments have an impact on the production wells, design parameters.
Not on the production well design parameters, but maybe out of ultimately the amount of water we can pump.
Right.
So you know, it wouldn't change. The commission and us will decide the design of that, you know, the screen size, the gravel pack, the actual physical construction of that well will be determined by us. The only thing that can be impacted is the amount of water we withdraw on a day-to-day basis.
Anybody have any questions in the on this proposal, September 15th proposal?
One thing I will say is that the drillers are completely slammed. So we need to, if we want to continue to move forward, and I'm not trying to put pressure on, but I would really like to put this on to a schedule for these guys, because I'm concerned about the winter. And, I'd like to get the state down there I'd just like them to come down and take a look at it. Not that they're going to give me they're not going to give me anything of any kind of a formal opinion or anything of that sort, but I would like to get them down there and get.
I think it would be good to, and if it'd be possible, it'd be good for maybe somebody from the MVD to be there. I'd like to be there myself and anybody else, but just to kind of walk through the process with them, and also, I think they understand the sensitivity of, Merrimack being Merrimack and the plight that we're in with the salt contamination and the iron and manganese and the warrant articles that we have to, put PFAS treatment on. Just to hear if they would be willing to give us a verbal commitment that they would do what they can to move the process along. And if they see any concerns with what we're showing them at the site walk, I would personally feel more comfortable if there could be a face-to-face discussion on that in the field. And I don't even know if they're coming out to the field these days anywheres, but.
Very difficult. It's very difficult to get them to come. I can check on that, but I can't guarantee it. We've been trying to get them to come down to another project site in the Seacoast, and it's been a challenge.
I guess where I'm having a challenge on here is I was always under the impression that before you went out and did a pump test on a production well and monitored and installed the piezometers and monitored the wetland and all that stuff, I always thought the DES had to weigh in on that and kind of give you their okay with the location of those piezometers and, the pumping tests that you're planning on doing, that they kind of review your procedures and make sure that everything's in order with them. And I'm sure you've done a million of these, so that's probably why they might not really look at your work closely.
No, you're right. You're right, but it's not at the preliminary stage. It is, what they do is we have to put together right now, all the work we're doing is on the backs of the MVD to demonstrate that you have a legitimate enough site for them to get engaged. So the point here is that the way the preliminary hydro works is that they ask you to, okay, give us data that we can believe that there's a good site. And so usually that's why we only go in with an 8-inch test well. We pump it, we get a sense of the yield, quality, potential limited impacts. It's not a big deal. Then they look at that and they weigh in. We make a proposal to them based on the information we collect in this stage of the game. We believe we need 3 or 4 more monitoring wells. We're going to put additional wetland piezometers over here. We think that the interference between well 2 and well 3, or whatever we're going to call this, well 9, is sufficient enough. We got to reduce our pumping rate for the long-term pumping. We propose a pump test plan, a pump test rate, final rate. We propose how we're going to get access to conclude the 400 protective radius. How are we going to get full control of that 400 protective radius? All those things go to the state. The state looks at that. This is the second stage and says, yeah, we agree with you, and typically this is how it happens. We agree with you with 90%, but we have another 15 or 10% of things we want. And by the way, during the process of citizens' input, we think that you should monitor this guy's well and that guy's well and so forth and so on. So the final pumping test gets done on the basis of an approval that's granted to the client or to the utility, but not the preliminary. The preliminary is everything we think we need to do to get to the final, get to the the playing stage, so to speak.
So you basically have to do 2 full-blown pump tests, monitoring reports, the whole 9 yards.
Well, this preliminary is not going to be as detailed as the I'm talking about a $62,000 pumping test as opposed to something that's going to be in the order of twice that. you know.
That was what your email was the future,
Yeah, the rest of it, you know.
okay. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's in their rules to even allow more of a streamline than what we're talking about. But I guess that's kind of where I was.
No, they don't allow for any streamlining because it is dictated. The only thing that can be streamlined is the work that we do. But the statute is clear in terms of how much time they have to give people to respond, to react to, you know, we have, once the preliminary report is done in accordance with the two regulations that I put in here, which is ENV DW 302 and WQ 403. Once that's submitted, then there's a legal time frame that's established that allows for public input, response and comment, and there's nothing you can do to change that. The drinking water rules in the state of New Hampshire are very deliberate and they're pretty well time tested.
Yeah. I was just wondering if we did a very thorough pump test and monitoring program initially, is there a chance that if DEP had no comment, DES had no comments, Butters had no comments, is there any chance that that pump test, that one pump test would be possibly enough to get full approval instead of having to go through the whole process a second time? It just seems kind of strange if someone says, oh no, you know what, I want you to put in a fourth wetland piezometer, that we're now into this whole nother pump test just to monitor one additional point or something. Just seems like it makes more sense to get all that on the table to begin with and then do it once. But
Well,
and I thought that's how the process was, but I guess.
Yeah, so there might be an outside chance, and in all the years I've been doing this, that's not ever happened. I probably should back up and let you know that we're not doing the typical preliminary. I put in a 120-hour pump test. Usually we do a 48-hour pump test and submit our preliminary. And the only reason I put the 120-hour test in is I was trying to respond to the commissioner's concerns that we are dealing with sodium chloride. We want as much water pumped as possible. We have an issue with iron and manganese, and PFAS is really not our biggest concern at this point.
Right.
Because of the treatment. So I've actually adjusted the preliminary to be more thorough than what we would normally submit. Normally we put an 8-inch test well, do a 48-hour pump test, and submit our data and see where we go. In this case, I'm saying, okay, we have a lot to lose. Let's pump as much as we possibly can for as long as we can realistically, and see if we've got any trends that are problematic. Now, I could go back and revise that and reduce that pumping test.
So, what was I going to ask? Oh, is there a prescribed pump test duration on the final pump test?
Yes, minimum 120 hours.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so I mean, I mean, I'm in favor of proceeding with this. I would like to, I think it's a great idea that you had about if DES would want to come out there and just take a look, and we can discuss this process with them. And, you know, maybe in a perfect world, if we do this once and nobody objects to it, then it flies. But I think I'm in favor of going ahead with the 18-inch well and doing this scope of work, and like I said, getting DES out to at least be aware of what we're doing. And they might offer some comments, you know. I'd certainly like them to see where we're planning on putting the well, the size of the well, you know, as much information as possible, the monitoring points. And if they would at least informally just say, you know, hey, instead of putting a monitoring point there, we think it makes more sense to put one over here. Maybe that could avoid some additional redundancy of having to do everything over again in the future. Maybe not, but if there's a chance, I'd like to take a shot at it, I guess.
Well, and I do think that's one of the reasons I didn't put in the whole package, and I understand Wolf's position on that and wanting to know, because there are some unknowns that we might be beneficiaries of in terms of doing this process more thoroughly up front than we normally would in the back end. So, yeah, I concur, and I think you understand that if we approve to go ahead tonight, and there's something that comes up in the interim, we're not going to push this to go forward. I mean, obviously, this is something we would stop in our tracks and say, you know, okay, there's something something else here that we need to be concerned about. I'm not in any, I mean, I got so many things going on. The last thing I want to do is go down a path that's not going to work for you all.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's beneficial to you to get the train started, because if I don't get on the drilling train,
Yeah.
it's going to take a long time. And this seems to be very urgent.
Question, Jamie. In your experience, how many well projects have failed between the preliminary step and the final step? Like what percentage? Just a percentage. If you would have to throw out a number.
For us, 0.
Wow.
But we have been hired by many communities where other consultants have gone halfway through and couldn't get it approved. And we've taken over the project to get the work done. So, I mean, that's a track record that I'm very proud of, but there are plenty of jobs in the state of New Hampshire that have not been able to get to the last level.
Until you got involved, or even then, and you had to switch to a different test well?
No, so yeah, so we had to go to a different test well. We had to actually start over again. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to stake our,
Risk.
risk, right? Or find out our stakes, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying we're gonna make this happen, right? So we really don't have any risk at all. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I've been saying there's risk here.
Is that what he said?
My whole premise is that there's risk here, but
Right.
from our end, we have been very fortunate to not have had any that have not gone forward. Now, with that said, I don't want to say that there's not going to be one that doesn't happen. I just see this one as being, I think this one is pretty favorable, to be honest with you. And I think, one of the biggest tripping points is contaminant threats. And we're in a pretty good environment. We got a project approved that I didn't think we would for Waterville Valley, and it had to be a well developed in the National Forest Service. So, ultimately, we were able to negotiate with the National Forest Service to get the thing done, but it took a little longer.
Some of these test results list manganese over the EPA's secondary limit.
I think that was a location over by, not where we're talking about here, right?
Well, and I don't have all the well positions in my head. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. Do you have the report in front of you?
Well, I think there was 2. One of them was sample number 911988.
Yeah. So let me just get here.
That's the TW6 well.
That's the one over in
So
Washington.
TW6 is the, yeah, so let me get to the next.
Where's the map? Figures,
6 is over by well 3.
right?
Which makes sense. Yeah. Okay, that's the one
That's
we want to get away from.
I see that right there.
TW1, you're talking about TW1A, excuse me. Here we go. I'm sorry, you're talking about TW6, right? TW6, right? Yeah, correct. That is over next to well number 3.
Right. And which one are we talking about here? I'm sorry.
TW6.
No, the one that we want to actually.
1B.
We're looking at 1B right now. That's
1B.
what I've based it on. Yep, 1B. Which has an ND and ND.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it is the best water quality out there, right?
It has a pH of 6.2.
Sodium 29, 54.
Yeah.
Non-detect arsenic, non-detect alkalinity. That's strange. 29 sodium. 4 chloride.
Well, and manganese is low, so non-detect actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. All right, we're good then, okay. I just got nervous when I saw that in the results.
Yeah.
No. Yep.
Okay.
So that kind of indicates there's a sort of kind of an abrupt change of the manganese somewhere between there, right?
Yeah. I mean, the manganese and the iron both over on the other, closer to well number 3. It is a variable. I'm dealing with one in Portsmouth right now where I've got manganese at over 1 in one location, and I moved 400 feet over and I got non-detect. So
Wow.
highly variable. It's driving me crazy.
And you haven't done PFAS tests on these, right?
No, we have not.
Right.
But we will be during the preliminary pumping test.
Right.
We'll be taking PFAS and full scale.
All right, I'm good.
Okay.
Did you want to go through this report with us at all? I mean, I know I've gone through it. I don't think I really had.
I don't think so. I think I went over it last meeting pretty thoroughly, and I just put it. I just put the words that I presented last time onto paper.
Right. So I guess the only decision for us to do is to determine if we want to move ahead with this proposal or not, and which well size we want to consider. And that's on page 4 of the proposal. Task 2, which well size is either 8, 12, or 18-inch diameter for the 3 different prices in there. And
Jamie, can I ask you one other question on the timing? So you mentioned that well drillers are really, really busy. So if you call them tomorrow and say, I need an 18-inch well or an 8-inch well, is there any difference on like how confident we are that we'll get done before the end of the year here this year?
Good question.
A really good question, and I can't answer that question.
yeah,
I could likely get an 8-inch well in, but I'm not sure I can get an 18-inch well in.
So now we're talking about, saving 2 months on the back end, but we're losing 6 to 8 months of winter time. So I would say,
Well, I can pump the well in the wintertime. I can, and if we have access to, I can drill in the wintertime too. The wintertime is not a problem for drilling.
yeah,
okay.
It's just that it's
slow.
It's slow, and it's but we just put in 2 major production wells last winter from Plymouth, and we had to plow. We had to plow almost a mile to get into the well sites. So
If I had to guess, I would say if they're drilling a large diameter well in the middle of in the winter, they're probably going to jack their price up a little bit because they know they're going to be dealing with the hassles of the weather. Whereas,
I got I did get a fixed price from this contractor winter, so so it's not going to change.
really, huh?
Because I wasn't sure. I didn't think that we would. I wasn't sure if we could make it, but his prices. The way he operates, he doesn't charge anything different for the winter or this fall. He just when you get there, you get there.
So does the board have a preference which way we want to go? If we want to go?
Seems like a good source to me. So what about the plowing you did? That's an additional expense, right?
Well, I'm assuming Ron's going to be able to plow us in and out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Get you in there.
Is Ron there?
Yep.
Yeah,
Ron, how do you feel about that?
there he is.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think we can, I don't see an issue.
Okay.
Well, I can make it happen.
Okay.
Are we gonna need to get in Conservation Commission ahead of this?
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna need a Conservation Commission, anything on, from them on this. I will double check with Dan, in my office, but, I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
I don't think it'd be a problem. I just don't know, like, time frame wise, if it would slow us down, you know?
Right.
That's the only reason I asked. I'm sure they'll be more than willing to work with us. It's our property. The property's already being used for a well aquifer, so this is the perfect use of that property. I just didn't know.
Right.
if we, you know. So I don't know if we're willing to make a motion on this to move forward. Does anybody want to make that motion, or are you looking for any other information before you convince yourself which way to go?
I'm good. I'd make the motion if nobody has anything else.
That's fine.
So I'd move we accept the contract and go forward with the 18-inch well.
All right, and that's the proposal from Emery and Garrett dated September 15, 2020, file number 33.P4058.21. And that's the, what amount would that be? The 269,800?
Correct.
All right. And we have to say where that's coming out of
That would be the,
system development,
no, we actually have
engineering.
right around 300 and something thousand left over in the new well, or the new source
Right.
that we need to spend, so.
Okay. So from that funding source, I think that covers all the basis for the motion. So motion made by John. I'll second it myself. So if there's any further discussion, do you guys have any questions? Are you looking at something?
It's actually 6:46 right now.
We have some other stuff committed.
We do. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any other questions or comments to offer? If not, then I'll call
I think comments would be good to summarize, because we're taking a gamble here, right? I mean, we're taking a
Yeah.
$100,000 gamble,
yeah,
but we're taking that gamble for
to
really
save
two reasons.
177.
Right. So we're taking that gamble because we believe that we can save possibly $177,000 on the back end.
I believe that's true.
And the chances of success that Jamie Emery promised us is 100%. Just kidding. No, but your success rate is. No, I'm kidding.
not saying that.
No, but you know,
But those are the reasons.
and we can cut multiple months out of the availability of that well, which could coincide with allowing us to save one construction season, right? Cut one winter season out of it. So
yeah,
I think that's a gamble that that I'm willing to take.
I mean, it sounded like the
wouldn't speak for anybody
preliminary
else.
test well indicated some of the best specific capacity and
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
drawdown information that you
Yeah.
can find. And it's very deep screen, so that means it's got even more water above it.
Yeah.
It's got all promising indicators.
There's nothing negative about what we have out there. And that's probably the only reason you're letting me, I'm actually
It
sitting
is.
here saying,
Well,
okay,
If it was a little iffy and shaky, I wouldn't feel so confident about it, you know?
Right.
I also believe we have some hidden savings that we don't see here yet. Because, you know, your team and you're going to be more, you know, if this is a multi-step process, right, then you're going to be more involved. You might have to be plowing more often, or clear the access path more often. There's certainly some time on Jamie's end that's probably going to be saved, and maybe some other, you know, contractors or whatnot, and some testing I understand it's a rigorous process, a two-step process, but there's always something. And we're gonna save some of that always.
We're gonna need to make a road to get in there as well.
That's right.
The plowing of it.
So
Right.
it's a gamble, but I think it's a good gamble. It's a valid gamble.
And I just want to make clear, we'd be saving 77,000. That's what.
That's what I thought I heard earlier, yeah.
Yeah, 77,000. But I can guarantee you that if we waited to do this drilling a year from now, the drilling of an 18-inch well will be far more.
That's right. It's another one. Yep.
So that is definitely the case.
That's right. Okay. Just wanted that. That's it.
All right, any other final thoughts on this before I call it? You?
I'm 100% with this as well, so I.
Good. Good. That helps. That's good to know. All right, I guess I'll call it. We'll do a hand call first, and then I'll go through roll call. So all those in favor of moving ahead with that proposal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Aye. All right, so we'll do a roll call. We'll start with Paul first.
Vote aye on the proposal.
All right, John
I vote in the affirmative as well.
and Ken,
I vote yes.
and you got positive by Wolf,
I vote yes.
and I do myself, so that carries 5-0-0. And if Ron had a vote, he would be 6-0-0. But that was good that you told us that, because
Yeah, I
I
appreciate
feel better that we're all on the same page now.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good
Yeah.
area, and whatever can shave off, absolutely.
Great. All right, great.
Well, the rest of the things won't take as long, I don't think.
Yeah, what else do we have?
Can I share my screen when I go to the next topic here?
Yep.
Okay. Let's just see here. Where am I? Hold on. What's next? Oh, replacement well R4.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, on that, the report I think is going in next week, and the state has, because this is a replacement well, has responded to our inquiry about well 5, knowing that the treatment plan is in need. And I just want to look at something here real quick. The word was, I can open this up. The DES understands the urgency of the approval for the replacement well and is hopeful they will review the final report and issue a final approval well within 2 to 3 weeks of its receipt. So they're going to cut down on this. They're not on the replacement wells. They're not as burdened as a new source. And so I was happy to hear them say that. So hoping that we can have our approval within the next month to 5 weeks to get that on. And where are we on well 4? Is that ready to go online?
The treatment plant? Yeah, I believe.
Well 4 to go through the treatment plant, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, it should be, I think all the samples were taken.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just waiting on approval.
I think
I
that.
mean, for the treatment plant.
No, I know it still has to, I just got the last set of results on Friday. So they've got to compile that and submit that to DES, and then they should be moving forward as well.
Okay. All right.
What are you talking about? The treatment plant?
Well 4R, the replacement well.
Yeah.
Took me a moment to remember the screen was due to be replaced, and we decided to actually.
Yeah, I thought he was already talking about that.
He is.
He was
Yeah, I am.
under inspection.
I guess my question was, when will the treatment plant be available for water to go through it from well 4?
A week and a half, right?
Yeah, about a week and a half, 2 weeks out.
Okay, so we'll probably be about 2 weeks behind that before we can get the approval to pump it. For well 4.
For well 4.
That's final activation approval, right? You're talking
Correct.
about?
Right.
Yeah, we already did the pump test and the report is into DES and they they said they're going to try to fast track it. Is that what you just read to us?
Yeah, no, the report's not in the DS, but it is going
Oh.
in, I think, next
Cool.
week,
Oh.
and they're going to fast track it, so.
Okay.
We were waiting on Barry on a couple of things we had to get from him, which I think we just got from the driller, that is. Let me share my screen if I can for a second. Is this possible? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
So one of the things I think is in your package, this is critical water levels. This is also something that I think is really kind of important for everybody to see. The well is next to well MBD2. It's called MW12-2B. This is the water level of the that we've been measuring since January of 2016. What's interesting about this is that there's a couple of levels here. If you recall, we've put together what we call critical water levels for action. So now that we're in a drought, this is kind of relevant. MBD2, so there's the first level is considered 90% of the is what we call Q90, or 90% of the recorded water levels for the period of record are above this level. So this yellow line says 90% of the time the water levels are above this level. And that's historically, and our data goes back for MBD2 all the way to 1986. So we have a fairly good amount of monitoring water level data. The second level is 95%. So 95%, and I'm not going to be able to tell you what color this is. It might be green. This dashed line that my arrow's going along is 95% of the time the water levels are above that. But if the water levels drop down below that, we call that a level 2 warning. When it gets down to level 3, we consider an emergency, and to level 4, which is not shown on here, a crisis. Okay? So level 3 is essentially the level between the crisis level and level 2, halfway between. And what do we call the crisis level? The crisis level is when the water level gets down to the pump intake or at the top of the screen, whatever that is. So you can see with well number 2, into the drought of 2016, our water levels got down here to around 30 feet, 34 feet. But we're in this drought right now, and the water levels are still above. And this is updated as of September 2nd. Water levels are still above our level of concern 1, right? So we have a fairly significant amount of availability of drawdown in that well. Now, if I skip to well number 3, right? Here's my level of concern. Here's my level 2 warning. Here's my level 3 emergency. And here's my level 4 of what I consider to be, we're reaching a crisis level, right? 90% of the time it's above there. 95% of the time it's above there. This is halfway between the screen and our level 2. And you can see currently we're down at level 3. So we're at a pretty low level in the aquifer at well 3, which is problematic. Now if I go to, let me skip ahead to another monitoring well. If I go to lot number 7, well 7, I'm really concerned because right now there are times when the water levels drop down to the screen or the pump intake. Again, here's my level 1 concern, level 2 concern, level 3 concern, and emergency. So when we were in 2016, we were getting down to the emergency level. We're back down here in 2020. We're back at the emergency level for well number 7. Suggests to me that we need to be looking at other sources for pumping, which would be well number 8. Excuse me. Well, this is 7. I just blew this up. Let me go back one. Hold on. This is 2016 to 2020. If I go to the next one, this is just January of this year to the current period. And you can see that there was a time, I think there was some testing going on, maybe, Ron, that dropped down the water level below what we consider to be an emergency level. But now, under normal operations, we can see that we're really close, the water level to the pump and to the intake.
So I know, one thing I do remember, Brian was saying that before we had well 7 cleaned, it was really drawing down. It was, once we had it cleaned, I guess it had shut the well off a couple times just because it was drawing down so much.
Yeah, so Barry, that's what Barry said?
Brian.
Oh, Brian, he's out in the field. Okay, right, okay.
So this is a transducer in well 7 itself, not a test well next to it, right?
Correct. So,
is it-
yeah, and so that's pretty good to know, Ron, because that would tell us. So they redeveloped it, and then the water levels came back up, and here you were. But right now, based on the pumping and based on the water level of the aquifer, we're down near the screen again, or at the intake. So we've got to make some decisions here on that. And then, but if you look at well number 8, here's our first level, second level, third level, fourth level. And this blue here is the temperature changes. So I just want you to know the temperatures vary significantly by season. But the darker color is actually the water levels. And you can see even right now, the water levels are still above our level 1. So we have a fair amount of distance of our saturated thickness of aquifer deposits that we could use. And so, just from this data here, we would suggest that you pump more water out of well 8 and reduce the pumping on the 7.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It's pretty dire.
So it also tells us, and why we want to be talking about this, is that it gives you more ammunition for when you put water restrictions on, right? Because you can look at this data that we've put together and say, okay, this is a management tool, not just for managing the pumping of each well, but also letting people know we have some real issues, right? You're not in,
It's in real time, that's the question.
When did we lift the ban? When did we lift the ban a little bit?
Middle
Middle of July.
Middle of July.
almost exactly a month.
Well, and you can actually see that drop here, right there.
Yeah, and right here, look at this drop. This is probably when I don't know exactly the date, but this would be July, middle of July, about right in here.
Right, that's probably when the ban got relieved a little bit, reduced.
Possible. And of course, we're not seeing any rainfall in the near future. I mean, as Keith said, it's great for construction. It's terrible for groundwater development. Well, not just groundwater, but surface water too. So I just thought you have those in your package. You can kind of study them and look at them, but I just wanted to go over that with you real quick because I thought it's really kind of interesting data. And it's why we do it, right? It's the reason why we collect this data. But well 2 is in good shape, and that's important.
Jamie, I got a question about, and maybe it's some here on this data, this table over here, but are the monitoring wells around 7 and 8 also severely declining?
Well,
because
yeah.
What I'm thinking is if it's a screen clogging issue, it could be just the well itself is being drawn down and the water can't get into the well.
Well, it isn't. It shouldn't be because you just developed this well
right? Yeah.
right now. So it's only 4 months away.
But it is a dirty well, so I'm wondering if that's part of the indicator that it maybe needs to be cleaned again.
Well, usually, I mean, I don't think I've never developed well twice in the same year. Usually, it's an every other year event.
We've been cleaning wells 7 and 8 yearly. Looking at doing it, yeah. They're
that bad.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, Don, it's a valid question, and it's something that I don't have in front of me at this moment, but I can have the guys plot that information right away. I didn't even, given the fact that it was, I had a note and I had forgotten when we were talking tonight that it had been developed earlier in the year.
This spreadsheet's ours. It's not.
Even so, what I'm curious about is that no matter what happens, you still got to reduce the pumping at that of well 7. And I think that you have plenty of opportunity to pump more water right now with well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some monitoring well data that Jill and Ron have provided here, and
Okay.
it does look like we are starting to get some severe drawdown in one of those monitoring wells around 7 and 8.
So that is, the one that's red is the one that's right in, that's the, thank you. That's right, that Jamie's basing
Right, but then you get some other orange ones here too that are
level twos, yeah.
starting to get in. Yeah. So it looks like the production wells are in level, what level's that, 3?
3 and 7 are on edge, and 2 and 8 are in good shape. And of
But
course, I
but-
haven't looked at well 5 at all.
But around well 7 and 8, the production wells look like they're in level 3, but there's a couple of monitoring wells in that area that are in level 2. And then there's some that aren't in any
Concern.
warning level at all. So it may be a more pronounced drawdown at the production well itself. So maybe it is clogging again.
That's what I'm wondering. That's what it looks like to me,
That's
where everything
kind of what
else.
this is telling me.
Yeah.
Well, how much does it cost us to clean?
It's at least 20,000, isn't it?
I was gonna say, I think 15 sticks to my mind, but yeah, it's probably 15 to 20,000. But we're ramping down anyways. We'll have it done in the spring. So, yeah, we'll dial it back and
What are you pumping right there, right now, in that well? How much, do you know?
It's,
so I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to.
the rates have been down all summer, haven't they? Or up? They've been lower, haven't they?
So as we went into so a full out ban, Brian was able to drop those down because we were seeing shorter, quicker cycles, backwash cycles. We had the more frequent.
Oh, yeah.
So we were so the iron was really coming in. So he backed them off to try to
So
lengthen out the
that's
cycles.
why the yield or the volume that we pumped is less.
Yeah, I want to say we're around two something, I believe, over there, but it might even be less than that now if Brian brought it down some more, but.
Yeah, I think I remember talking about this before, that the iron and manganese, I think we're pulling in more iron and manganese. And I think we had to use more water out there because of wells 4 and 5 being down.
I'm sure of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've been steady. We don't shut that plant down at all. It just runs.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
That was that. And then I think there was one other thing you wanted to talk about, and that was.
So I don't remember seeing this report in February, but I'm glad you gave us a few pages of it because it definitely helped explain what the different levels are, the drought levels and our response levels.
It's a really good program, I think, in terms of, when I say program, monitoring program.
Right.
Because that information that I just presented, I think is really what a lot of utilities need to have, because more often than not, we're being asked to go out and generate that data without the history. And there's some of that information is goes back, like I said, 1986 for MDD2. Wow. MDD3 goes back to 1986. MDD5 goes back to 2000. and NBD 7 and 8 go back to 2000. So it's a pretty good database to be used.
Right.
One other thing I want to share with you here, which is
PFAS graph.
let's see. Do you have the, I don't have it so I can share on my screen, I guess. This is the PFAS I prepared. You asked me at the last meeting to give you the PFAS for Pennachuck.
Right.
And let me just see if I can find this. But I don't seem to be able to.
Jamie, the email you sent with it was September 2nd at 10:34 a.m.
Did I send it to you?
Yes,
Okay.
it's your DZA email.
Okay. What was the date?
September 2nd at 10:34 in the morning.
Okay. There you go. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So here is the lab finished water PFAS concentrations from the website. And then there's this is from the DES database. And this is the website and the DES database. So essentially you can see that, things have gone down to 0 for PFHXS and PFNA and
PFOS.
and almost to 0 for PFOA. And that data is, I think it's up to the end of August, end of August data.
Yeah, that's
That was-
good. That's,
yeah,
that's,
that was-
that's what we asked for.
Yep.
So it looks like they definitely, they did something over there, whether they used the river instead of Pennachuck Brook.
Well, I think they went off of Witches Brook
Right.
watershed. Yep.
But I still think they have carbon there.
They do.
They do, right? Didn't
Yeah.
they tell us that? So
Yep.
they must be treating some of the water.
Curious as to why they're getting hits of PFOA still, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
I don't know, unless is that coming out of the river? Because the river is not non-detect, but I don't know if they're
Well, I
if
think
they're
it's-
running all of the river water through the carbon filters or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that either. I presume they were, but I don't know that for a fact.
Maybe they're bypassing on some days when they can't, the carbon filters aren't.
Maybe.
I don't know. Questions for Pennachuck.
Yeah, I mean, we never really got a solid answer on if they're using the Witches Brook or.
Yeah. This,
Right,
this
so that's all I had from my end.
Yeah. While we're on the subject, I don't remember I know, and I don't know if anybody from Underwood's still on. I don't think they are, but as part of their work that Underwood's doing about figuring out what our options are if we were considering Manchester Waterworks, supplemental water, I was interested in knowing what the PFAS concentrations were in that water. And I don't remember if Keith said that they would look that up and graph that for us or not, but if they aren't doing it, it's probably something that would be also important to know is what Manchester's PFAS levels are. And I think Ken looked it up on his phone last time we were in the meeting or something. So the data's there. I just didn't know if anybody is already planning on graphing that or not, but since we have Pennachuck, it probably kind of makes sense if we could look at what the levels are from Manchester and see if we can make any trends out. I mean, I'm encouraged to see Pennachuck, it looks like it's definitely going down. I think Manchester was always pretty low anyways.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that's something we might want to have Jamie do, since you seem to be sort of the keeper of the PFAS graphs and water quality graphs.
Okay. Happy to do that.
I can give Keith a call tomorrow and just, if he
Yeah.
is, if he
If
is,
he's already doing it, or,
Yeah, if he's doing it, that's fine. And if he wants us to do it, we can do it too. Or do it instead. So I'll leave it up to you, Ron, to direct the
Yeah.
traffic on that. one.
yeah, I'll find out, I'll call Keith first. If he's not, then I'll give you a buzz or shoot you an email and with a go-ahead.
right?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about a graph, but I did talk to Phil a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and he said it's about 3.5.
PFOA
Manchester?
probably, yeah.
In Manchester?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Which is about what the river level is, so that would make sense.
Yeah, because I don't, do you know if Manchester uses any carbon? Because other than
I
that,
don't
if they
think
don't,
so.
so it must just pass right through, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't get removed, I would think, so,
Yeah, I think so.
okay. Was that all that was on the agenda for Jamie? Oh, I wanted to ask you if you had any luck on contacting Brandon about that salt meeting or something? We were
Yeah.
thinking-
I did, and he's willing to participate. And he's changed his job. He said he would definitely become engaged in it. We were thinking late fall, something of that nature, late October, or in that range, not late fall, but late October. So I have corresponded with him. I sent him a copy of the salt PowerPoint presentation to him and both Steve Roy, and he got back to me about a week later, and he's passed that presentation on to some others in the state. So I think at the end of the day, we were going to get their support. He wasn't sure how he was going to formulate it, but I can follow up on that. I haven't established a time frame yet, but this would be a meeting with the stakeholders that are in the wellhead protection areas.
Yeah, right. All right, that's good. I just wanted to see if, we're moving along, because the time's coming to be of the essence on that one with,
It is.
what is it, the last day of summer or first day of fall today? And
Don't say it.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody's getting their salt applicators ready to roll.
Greased up.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
All right. I don't think I have any other questions for Jamie. I don't know if anybody else has any items, last minute items or questions to bring up, or Jamie, if you have anything more to tell us about.
Nope. I'm good.
All right. Really?
I'm surprised too.
Because just what did they join the work?
Okay. So that's
I'm
good.
gonna stop sharing. Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and
Thanks, Jamie.
all right. Good to see you, John.
We're
Good to
still
see you,
seeing
Paul.
his screen, I think.
Ken.
Thank-
See you guys.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Wolf.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Don.
All right, how do we get that back?
Jamie,
Did he have to give up his screen or something before he left, or?
I see you guys perfectly.
Huh.
you can?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just got news that apparently the shared screens have not been shared with the public. So there's something we can see it, but apparently the public can't see it.
I could see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And I could
saw.
see you.
Don't click on it.
Do I dare close out of that? Because it looks like there's something behind it.
Why don't you go down?
Minimize it and see what happens.
Oh, that's a good call.
There we go.
Hey. All right.
Can you see if there's members of the public attending that are not presenters or, part?
No, there's 7 participants, it says.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are
that's all that's up
participants, but isn't that a different category?
Well, attendees are only, they can listen in, but they can't screen share and stuff. And it's not,
We're working with a new Zoom version here, so that's why we're trying to get the bugs out.
yeah.
Well, I guess while we're looking at that, why don't we see if we can move on to, when we get the next thing, the minutes. And I'd like to start with we have minutes from the non-public session, but we can approve those in the public session, but we probably can't talk about any edits if anybody has any edits to make. So before we get into this, I'll just ask you guys, do you have any suggested edits for the August 17 non-public meeting minutes? And if you do, we'll have to table them. But if you don't have any edits, then we can probably vote to approve them as written. It's pretty
What is
short.
me?
Yeah, I don't have anything either, so I'm willing to approve if you guys don't have any other edits to make.
I'm good.
All
I'm
right.
good.
I'm good.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion to approve the non-public minutes from August 17th? As written? I'll make that motion then.
I was gonna say so moved. Sorry, I was distracted. So moved.
I did not.
Second.
Second? All right,
Well, okay.
moved by Wolf, second by John. All those in favor?
Paul's got to abstain. Paul wasn't at that meeting.
Oh yeah, Paul wasn't there.
Yeah, I'll be abstaining for those.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, let's do a roll call. Paul, you're abstaining. You want to say that again?
I'm abstaining from this.
Okay, John, how do you vote?
I vote to approve the minutes.
Ken?
I approve the minutes.
Wolf?
I approve the minutes.
And I approve the minutes too, so that's 401. Paul McLaughlin abstaining.
Correct.
Great. All right, next we have the August 17th minutes from the regular session.
I have one edit.
Okay,
Page 6, line 17. I think is missing a source at the end of the sentence. Demonstrate that they are not impairing an existing water source.
sounds good. Anybody else have any other corrections to offer on the August 17th regular session meeting minutes? If not, then we can entertain a motion to approve them as amended.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion for approval by Wolf, second by Ken. Again, I think, Paul, you were absent on this, but if you want to go ahead and start with the roll call.
I'll be abstaining from the vote on the minutes.
Okay. John?
Vote to approve.
Ken?
Approve.
Wolf?
Approve.
Myself approve, so that carries 401 with Paul abstaining. And the other minutes we have is from the special meeting of September 10, 2020. And I do have a few edits to make on that one. On page 1, line 44, these are the September 10th minutes. I think the 11,000 should be 1,100 gallons per minute.
Mhm.
I wish we could get 11,000 gallons per
As well.
That would be a real good well. Okay, so let me see.
That's a good catch.
On line 50, it says, look at the, what am I trying to do here? 1,000 to 1,100 range as maximum daily output. I wanted it to say, look at the, I'm sorry, where am I? Yeah, after it says maximum daily output, I think we're talking about well 2 for that one. So I just want to add the words for well 2 after where it says max daily output. And then I had another one on line 49. It says, actually 48 and 49, at the end of 48, it says, would not recommend pumping more than 2,000 GPM from this system. And I think what we want to add in there for clarity is just put parentheses, well 2 plus a future well. Because I think Jamie was talking about the combination of well 2 and the future well that we're looking for.
Yeah, I would agree.
I just didn't want people to be confused if we're talking about any well individually.
Yeah.
So just after the word system, if you can add parentheses, well 2 plus a future well. Let's see here. And on page 2, line 2, it says the property being looked for, the property being looked at for well 3 is already owned by MVD. I think it should say the property being looked at for well 3's replacement. If you can add the word replacement after well 3, apostrophe S and replacement. Line 13, in favor of a larger well, I think you want to add the words to replace well 3. And then line 18, it says the WTP is, I think it should say designed instead of approved for 2,000 gallons a minute. So that's line 18 after WTP is designed for 2,000 gallons a minute. Line 23, towards the end of that line, it says informed him that, just add the word he, would put together pricing. Then on line 35, after the word specifically noting, if you can add the words test well, locations 1B and 1D. Just to be clear, so people reading this can understand, we're just talking about what test wells. And I just got one more on page 3, line 12, where it says issues needed to be treated, comma, it would be included in, it says in an addition. I just wanted to add in well 2 WTP addition. And that's all I got for that. Anybody else have anything, or can we move to approve those?
So moved.
All right, motion by Wolf to approve the September 10, 2020 special meeting minutes. I'll second that. So I think we were all there for that one, right? So we'll start with roll call. Paul, what's your vote to approve those minutes?
I vote to approve the minutes.
Thanks. John?
Approve the minutes.
Ken?
Approve.
Wolf?
Approve.
And myself approve, so that's 5-0-0 to approve the minutes as amended for September 10th, special meeting. All right, so that brings us to, where are we here? Action items. All right. Okay, so I think we already went over the fact that we're okay with crossing off items 3 and 4. Actually, I'm skipping over. So item 2, I think you had something in the packet for this. Right, Ron? Additional information, or did this come through in an
Came
email or
through on
something?
the email. It came through as a handout. I don't know what I,
Yes, sir.
yeah, it was a handout though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think maybe we just got this today, so I really haven't had a chance to dive into it. I don't even know if you got that. It was sent out via email. I don't know if you guys got it. Was it an email?
It was email plus we have handouts.
Yeah.
Is that the same as this one?
Yep.
No, because it looks different.
Is it?
Yours is prettier than mine. I know that much.
All right, so I don't know if these guys got it.
Because you get the,
Was it in the packet, you said? Or no, it was in the handout here.
It was a handout and then it was emailed.
Okay. Here's this one.
Could we add a total line to that? Just a total?
yeah, we could do that.
And we just see how much
Yep.
spending is coming our way.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, I guess this is more for preparation for the next meeting, right?
Yeah, because I don't think we have time to kind of
Right.
piece this apart right now, unless there's anything that stands out to you that you wanted to point out, but if not.
No, just more of an update. I mean.
So I guess what I'll do is I'll just recommend that the commissioners, if you want to just kind of review this engineering service request tracking sheet. It's something.
Where exactly is that?
It's an engineering service request tracking sheet. So
My
engineering-
question is, where is it? I don't have that.
It was, I emailed it to you guys.
You email, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, because it's kind of fresh information. We're just seeing this for the first time today.
Right.
Maybe just be aware of it, and if you're interested to look through it, and we could go over it for the next meeting. It's an ongoing action item anyways that says to be done quarterly, so it's just a way for us to track the different authorized services that Underwood, and is Jamie on this too, or is this just Underwood, right?
That's ours. That's just.
That's just Underwood? All right. So it's just a way for
You
us.
know where this is going, right?
What's that?
I didn't realize we're distinguishing that. From me, the idea was that we have all the external contracts listed here, just so we have visibility of what's all out there. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, that's what Underwood calls them. So that's why it's
Right.
just.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, so apologies for that. So, and I think Jamie's is a lot less in the number of, it's
Should be.
it's not quite the same
Right.
effort, but the idea was basically, and really in reality, it's not just really those two. It's really anybody that we have out there that has ongoing lengthy contracts going for us, right?
Right.
Just because we're really throwing a lot of stuff out there the last 2 years, right? And we just want to have that in front of us, I guess.
Okay. All right, so we're on the action items list. So 2 is going to stay on there. I think we already talked about that we did agree to cross off 3 and 4 earlier. Number 5, I think we can cross that off now because that Jamie did graph the PFOA, PFOS for Pennachuck. Unless you want to change that to have them graph or
Manchester.
the water quality for Manchester Water Works.
I don't think it's really been that variable, though. I'm not sure if I
Well,
get the impression that it's been right around that level.
yeah.
I guess we could.
I mean, the only reason is I'm trying to see if we can get this information already in a running graph so that we can present it to any of our customers if we do want to go that route about using Manchester Water Works, because they're going to be asking questions about what the PFAS levels have been. Although if we're not going to bother using that water, then maybe it doesn't matter, but I don't know. I would like to see it. If you guys don't think it's important enough to graph it, I don't care. It's up to you.
No, we can. I mean, like I said, the conversation I had with him, it was really more about now, but, so,
Right.
I mean, if you want to see historically, then I'm
I
graphic.
think history matters though.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I don't know how far back he needs to go, but it's, I mean, it's really, the thing is, if you're gonna go on you're gonna dump it from a spreadsheet, you might as well graph, 20 data points instead of 3. It's not a big deal. So I think just for consistency, we should probably have it if we have it for Pennachuck. So Amanda, can you change number 5 just to say instead of Pennachuck, just call it Manchester Water Works?
Do you want me to change it or do you want me to add another one where I've been just hiding the completed tasks?
Yeah, if you want to add a new one on, and we'll delete this one. I
Okay.
guess that's officially the way we've been doing it, right?
Yep.
So we're good to delete this one, number 5 right now, because we've got that information. And then it looks like we're jumping to number 10, and what is this, a letter for the stump dump? Is that thing still hanging around
I'm
somewhere?
just guilty.
Well, but really it's been hanging on me and this is the 3rd month it's hanging on me. So I have to own that one. So
If we just send it out the way it is, I mean, I don't know if.
it had like 2 typos or 3 or something and a couple things. I don't know if you fixed those. So
I probably haven't, so.
Okay.
Well, I know I haven't because I didn't.
can you send me the latest version so I work off the latest version? Just send that to me quick.
Actually, I think, yes, yeah, you should have it because I haven't changed.
Nice way to remind me.
Yeah. All right, so number 10 stays.
Let's do that. Okay, and then
Number 10 stays. Number 11, I can cross that off because Jamie does have the results. He graphed the data already, so number 11 can go. Number 12, I think that's, did we close that or is that still open? Capital reserve funds for well development can be used for engineering orders.
yeah, I think it was part of the.
Michelle looked into that. And
Yeah.
that's how we found out we can use them.
Well, if you're not sure, I guess we can keep.
I'm not 100% on that right now.
All right. So I think we got to keep 12. I don't think we've gotten any further on 13. I think 13 is going to stay, right? 16.
I know Michelle wanted to talk research with the what was it? New Hampshire
The auditors or something, or-
Municipal Association or something like that. She wanted to check her network of municipalities if they had any templates that she could write on or we could write on.
Okay.
Yep. I think she does have some, but yeah.
What's the status of 16?
That's done because that's the result of us
This is
having
what-
went
yeah.
to the what was it called?
Webinar?
The webinar,
The
instead
webinar
of
version
a
of
Zoom
Zoom.
meeting. So
All right. All right, so 16, we can cross that off, Amanda.
Yep.
17, I guess, is just an ongoing thing that would come up whenever we have another contract.
Yep.
18.
Did-
Yeah, so Jamie's still looking into that to set up a meeting for the salt study. All right, well, that's good. At least we crossed several of these off, so that's good. And we added one more, which is the PFAS for Manchester. Any other items in there?
We had another one
Do
during.
we have another one in there?
We had one during the meeting as well.
Yeah.
we did.
What one was that, Amanda?
Save
We had
us.
another one from Underwood.
We had one for lost water too. We're gonna look
That's
at
the
lost
one.
water contract.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good.
Yeah, and
Did
that's
you get that one, Amanda?
Yes, that's the one. That's the one from Underwood.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna look into the lost water balance.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. All right, good. So everybody set with the action item list?
Yes.
All right, let's move on. What else we got next would be
Board business.
old business. Anybody have any old business?
Nope.
What is this letter?
The action
here?
item list was kind of our old business, right, if you think about it.
Oh, this is just a letter to Parker Village. Do we need to talk about that at all, or I guess it's old business? So there's a letter in our packet here from Ron to Parker Village. And, it looks like we're really asking for more information on the,
It's actually from Jamie.
it's from
It's
James.
actually from Jamie.
Oh, yeah, I'm reading Garrett, there it is. Oh, it's to you, all right.
Yep.
So is this going out to Parker Village?
It's already gone out.
Okay,
They're just, they talk to their side person, but they're also trying to, referenced in there. They need to get some numbers and stuff to DES, and basically DES is gonna be the one that's gonna call it, if they're allowed to.
all right. That's good summary there, thanks. Any other old business in here that we need to talk about? I don't think so. Oh, well, that's new business. All right, so if there's no old business to bring up, should we move on to new business? Anybody have any old business? No, new business?
New business.
Want to talk about this monthly bills?
So yeah, new business. As you know, I'm volunteering as PR officer for MVD in the various Merrimack forums. Since Thursday or Friday last week, there were a lot of comments that water bills have shot up for some people. There were also a lot that stated theirs hasn't. I know ours hasn't from my house. But there were some people that have stated that their water bill has skyrocketed, and they didn't see how that's possible considering the very stringent and restrictive water limitations, outside watering limitations this year. So I obviously have no insight why that would be the case. We know that there's a 19% increase from last July over this July, right? Because the rate increase
Yeah.
that went into effect July 1st last year. Other than that, I didn't really have an answer. So I obviously asked everybody to reach out to staff, which some people have. But I also figured it was enough people that it seemed that it's something that we should at least talk about. And I'm hearing that you have some ideas what's going on.
Yeah, when we did the rate increase, that was July 1st, so we have 3 cycles. So
3 billing cycles.
3 billing cycles,
Right.
billing routes. So if it was Route 3's billing month, they would be charged for the previous 3 months for their usage. If it was, Route 2, their bill may not have been until the next month, so they're only getting charged for 2 months. And then Route 3 would have only been charged for 1 month. So that's one reason. We've had several people calling in this year complaining about their high water bills, and we hand out these red dye tablets that they can come and get if they'd like to, and they're to put it in the back of the toilet to show if there's any water leaking through, because that's the biggest thing for excessive water usage is running toilets. So Amy goes through all of that with them. She'll talk to them about the meter, if you can go downstairs, see if it's spinning, get a reading, she'll compare it. I mean, she goes through the whole setup with them. So it's a lot easier rather than people post on social media. Just give us a call.
That's why I send them here all the time, every time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I make it very clear they need to reach out to you guys.
Yeah, we know the account too, so that we can keep track of things.
Right.
It's just hugely helpful to talk to the customer, and
And then
that's
you-
what we like them when they call in.
You can look up their history of usage too, right? And see truly what their usage was this year compared to last year. And
A lot of people are saying, "Oh, I didn't realize I used that much," because you're walking away when you're working and such. You're walking away, you have the
Right.
irrigation on, or something else is running. You get home and you just pay the bill and stuff. So it's nice to have that comparison. We're happy to email over their account history and show them exactly what they're looking at.
And you just said something that, in fact, I probably should have brought up to some people. Well, not to individual people, but as a general statement. Fact of the matter is, last year we were all at work,
Right?
Yeah.
right? And we were in schools, right? And a lot of people have been at home for the month of July. Some people were traveling, right, for vacation or something, and in fact are now staying home. So that can obviously increase the bathroom usage alone, can drastically increase the water usage.
And I know personally, last year I had a leaky zone valve in one of my irrigation lines, and I didn't even notice it until I was mowing the lawn, and it was like a big puddle of mud, and I was like, what's going on here? And then I went and looked at my meter, and it was turning very slowly, but 24 hours a day of losing that water will make a big difference. And then I did get the bill, and I was like, yep, there it is.
That's a good point, Don. In all of the residential meters actually have an indicator, a flow indicator on it. So if there's ever a question, if they possibly have a leak or something, they can go down and actually look at the top of their meter and see flow.
And that's what I did. It was this tiny little triangle that was just turning slow, but it was still turning, and that means this water continuous. And I know there was nobody in the house, no toilets are running, nothing. And that's where I knew there was a leak. And so I fixed the zone valve, and the meter doesn't turn anymore when there's no water being used. So if anybody's listening, that's something they can look into. So
in retrospective, nobody that called so far, we have discovered any snafu of any sorts that we would have to.
Excuse me, no, it's funny. I mean, 90% of the time, it's somebody's got a running toilet.
Right.
And you even tell them, if you don't want to come down and get the tablets, just come in the back of the holding tank there. If it shows up in the toilet bowl, you know that it's passing through.
right.
Okay.
All right, that's all.
How many people called so far, like last week or so?
I don't know. You need to take some.
She said she had a bunch.
Yeah.
But noticeably more than normally, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's people just recognizing or realizing that the bills are going up, but so far nothing that was a smoking gun that seemed suspicious.
Just a few of the ones that were on your list that you had asked about.
Yeah.
She had already spoke to them.
Right. Yeah, okay, sounds good.
All right, if we don't have any more new business from anyone, then we can move to superintendent report.
I do have a quick one.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask maybe one more action item. So, and I guess we're going to find out when we look at the town hall stream, not the town hall stream, the Merrimack TV stream. We're going to probably see what people have seen tonight, right? Would be my assumption.
Yeah, it should be.
Right. So I guess I just want to make sure that for the next meeting.
No. And the reason I'm saying that is because the two guys from Merrimack TV are, I put them on as panelists so that they could speak with us and stuff like that. What the public is an attendee.
Right.
So they're supposed to be able to see it, listen in and that type of thing. But I didn't see any attendees on here, so did we have it?
No, we didn't. The person that notified me was actually on townhallstream.com, which is going through in real time as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but
Yes,
that obviously
it's
doesn't
coming
share the Zoom meeting. It's just this view from that corner of the room down here. So that explains that part.
Yeah.
But I guess I would like to make sure that, and I think this is great. I think this is, we're taking strides every meeting, but I think it would be great before the next meeting if we can do some kind of trial run to verify that whatever is being shared is being visible to the attendees instead of the panelists as well. You know, both the attendees and the panelists.
Because they're supposed to be able to listen in and watch, but not participate unless called upon or something.
And they may have, but you know, I just want to make sure that we have that validated, so we don't have that uncertainty in the next meeting. I think sharing the engineers sharing the screen is awesome. I think, in fact, we should probably also share whatever we hand out here, that is public information that we talk about. You know, we can share that right here as well, right? And there's really no reason not to. And it would be great if we do that we have validation that the public can see that too, that the attendees can see that too, not just the panelists.
Supposed to.
If I can help with that, do a dry run, I'll be happy
We're
with
getting
it.
closer.
No, we are. I mean, this is awesome. This is really great. So I'm not complaining at all.
Way, leaps and bounds better than just even a year or two ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So I have a question. How does the public figure out about how to get to the meeting? I mean, I know Dawn reads that thing every time, but it's like, unless you're at the meeting already, you're not gonna hear it.
All right, so there's one way is you can subscribe to be on the email list. So when the agenda comes out, it gets emailed to you. And I'm on that, my personal email. So if you go pull up, it's a link directly to the MVD website to the agenda, and right on the agenda, I think it has the Zoom
Yeah.
link on it and stuff I just read.
So you can get to the link from the website.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's the panel, I'm sorry, that's the attendee list link, right? Not the panelist link.
Right.
Right. I was wondering if Jamie maybe clicked on the agenda instead of the invite that he received by
No, that's
email.
why it took us so long. He had the original email that all of you guys got. And then, so I resent that to him. It was his GZA, and then it was his GZA email, and then he couldn't log into that. So we were trying everything. I said to get through my phone, and then for some reason it worked.
Okay.
But he could hear us. And like he's talking to me on the phone. I hear you guys in the background through the phone.
Mhm.
He can hear, but he couldn't have the audio or video of himself.
Wow,
It's strange.
that is weird. Okay, anything else? Are we good for superintendent report?
I'm shutting up.
That's all right. Okay, Ron, you got the floor?
Yeah, just a quick, so we had talked about sending out the SALT letter,
Oh, yeah.
redoing it, so we'll get that out this week. Unless the board wants to see it again, but other than that,
Let's do it.
okay.
Should we say something in there about,
Well, it had all the graphs and it, well, I'm sorry.
no, I'm just saying about that we're trying to get a possible meeting together of some sort for, I don't know if, or
We
we
can do a separate announcement
just
just after the
invite.
fact.
I just wanted to see if it makes sense that they would know that something's coming, but maybe we wouldn't want to invite everybody anyways, just like certain large users, large parking
That
lot.
was kind of what I was thinking.
All right, never mind, but yeah, I mean, I think sending it out as it was last year and just changing a date on it and
Going to change up the beginning just a little bit, saying you're being provided this notice again as we come up on the winter season type thing, so they know
Yeah.
they're getting it.
Good
the second
idea.
time.
And then the graphs, we got the updated graphs or not? We didn't get updated on salts. Well, I don't know how many samples were missing from this year, from last year. How often do we sample
point.
sodium chloride?
The graph,
Quarterly.
Quarterly?
we want to update the graphs.
Do we want to have Jamie update the graphs and then send them
It's got
out?
Everything. Yeah, every time we do quarterlies or any samples, they send them off to Luke, so they have them.
Yeah, we'll update the graphs.
Yeah,
for
those
results.
to be
So It's not going to be
current. Okay. Sounds good. Anything else?
That's it
You
for
want
me.
to update the graphs for the letter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Because it's going to have
It is all
Although
last
as-
a year old.
It's all last year's.
but it included last winter, right?
No, it went out and when did it go out?
Ooh. I think it went out before last winter.
I thought it didn't go out at
No,
all,
it
actually.
didn't.
It never went out.
Remember we got the other letter out about,
No, it definitely went out.
I don't know the date on it when it went out now that you. No, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right.
Seems like it's been a year, but
I mean, I think did we talk about like updating these graphs quarterly anyways? Or we just never really,
I think we did ask him to do that,
I thought we remembered.
and I
talking
think he
about
is
that.
doing that.
So maybe he's got a whole
Yeah, there was
year's
an,
worth of data to update.
there was a
anyways,
non-ES
so-
offer that.
Should be an action item.
I'm pretty sure there is an order for him that we approved, that he updates these quarterly. Earlier this year, we approved that.
I believe yes, but
isn't that part of his proposal for the sodium chloride?
I think it was.
See if you can do it. If not, then we'll send out the old graphs. But it just seems like when you send something out, you got more current information. It just looks more
Yeah.
professional and we're on top of it more.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
All right.
Change those graphs. So.
Okay, anything else?
Old Blood Road, what is the timeline for that?
As far as the.
Like the extension towards that new development and closing the loop? Just ballpark.
Not sure. I can get that to you though.
But what's happening right now here, you know, McQuestion and Medellin and so on, what is
That's all sewer.
But right, that has nothing to do with what we're doing,
No.
right? That's all sewer, right?
So I don't know if that work has started yet or not. I believe they wanted to get Tom wouldn't let him go in, and I could be stating this wrong, but I know they wanted to do the tap for the project, and it wasn't, they were being held off, I believe, until after school starts, so.
But it's I wasn't sure if it's even this year or next year, so it's this year?
It'd be this year, yeah, they're gonna tap Madeline Bennett and bringing it over onto, and it's still Madeline Bennett Lane, or no, that'd be Old Blood, the extension of
Right,
Old Blood.
right.
So.
Right. Okay.
But everything that's going on now on the Lake Road, that's all sewer work for that project.
Okay.
All right, I can't tell, it looks like we don't have any public or press, but this would be the time for questions from the press or questions from the public. I can't tell if you see any other participants in there.
6.
All right, so 6 is all we got. So we got nobody else on there. All right, and I guess that's it. So next meeting is October 19th. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
What do I do?
So moved?
Motion to adjourn by Wolf. Second by John. I saw your lips move. You can unmute yourself for the final vote. All right, Paul, we'll start with you.
Vote aye.
Aye. John,
Hi.
Ken,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
myself, aye. So motion to adjourn carries 5-0-0. Thanks for your patience.